Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Heavy Metallurgy, number 166, as a matter of fact. I'm your co-host, Marty. It's good to see you. And joined, as always, by the ever-awesome Professor Steele himself, Alan, our awesome co-host. How are you today?
I'm doing good. It's also good to see everybody. So cheers to folks already filling in the live chat. Thanks for coming in, hanging out with us on another Friday night installment. We've got a fun topic. We've got a great guest who's returning for the first time in a while. It's been a minute, and we'll bring him out in just a minute. But we do have a few little items of business we must tend to first. Marty, if you would do the honors.
Yeah, Friday, release day in the music world, and metal is no exception. So we've conjured up a little list of new releases. Not all of which we've heard, of course, but let's get started. For Friday, July 5th, we have Aeons, The Ghosts of What We Knew on Slip Trick, Apostento, No Safe Haven on Extreme, Duel, Breakfast with Death on Heavy Psych Sounds, Kryptos, Decimator on AFM, Liminal Shroud, Visions of Collapse on Willowtip, Niflheim, Unholy Death on Darkness Shall Rise. It must be a demo comp, I believe.
Yeah, Darkness Shall Rise has been doing a bunch of those this year.
Yep. Octoploid, Beyond the Eons on Reigning Phoenix. Orden Ogan, The Order of Fear on Reigning Phoenix, which I'm hoping to review this weekend and have up for you all on Monday. For the four people that care. Satan Satyrs, After Dark on TP. Visions of Atlantis, Pirates 2, Armada on
I can't believe that band still exists.
Yeah.
It's like the worst Nightwish clone of all the Nightwish clones.
They're on Napalm, a big label.
And if there was ever a label that was going to hire the worst Nightwish clone, let's be honest, it's Napalm.
They nailed it.
That's right up their alley.
Okay, we got Volvodina on what's the name of that? Entebeni on Unique Leader. I don't know. I'm sure it goes Bree. Wormed, Omegon on Season of Mist, and lastly Zastler, Disharmonic Variations on Lupus Lounge. Is there anything I missed that was on your list, Alan?
Just a couple. Krallis has a new album out. I think it's an independent release called Inorganic Rights. And also another American black metal unit, Achilles, is back with House of the Black Geminus. This is their third release. I think technically the second one's considered an EP, so this would technically be their second full-length album. So yeah, a few things coming out here and there. There's a lot of releases kind of piling up towards the end of July, so if it feels like things are a little sparse right now, save your pennies. You might need them towards the end of the month. If nothing's coming out right now, that catches your fancy.
Right on. And is there anything else you want to add before we bring our esteemed guest on?
No, I think we're pretty much have covered our bases. We don't have any other big announcements. We'll cover upcoming things at the end of the show like we normally do. So let's go ahead and get our terrific guest out here and alive where he can talk to folks.
It's been a minute since we've had this gentleman on, and our friend Patrick from Ground Zero Salem. Welcome back, Pat. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. Hold your applause. All right.
Woo.
Please. I have audio sensitivity, no clapping.
Damn it.
How's everybody doing?
We're doing good. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a minute or two.
Here.
Been a minute. What's been going on with Ground Zero Salem?
Not a lot. As you can see, I have a little bit of a new setup here. I've upgraded some equipment lately. I've got a nicer camera, like a proper actual digital camera, some better lighting. I've expanded into my little bonus room here, so you can see a little bit more of what's going on behind me. As far as the channel itself, it's been doing a lot better since I've actually been making videos again. Kind of funny how that works.
It is funny how that works.
Yeah. It slowed down a little bit just because I've been busy with family stuff, but I've got a bunch of stuff in the pipeline planned. Probably going to shoot a video tomorrow. Lots of people have been participating. As opposed to how the channel went traditionally, a lot of people are really responsive to me talking about punk and hardcore, which is about half of what I love and talk about. You know, I'm into both kinds of music. So, things are good in short. Thanks to everybody for stopping by and supporting, you know, subscribing. Bunch of new subs lately, so thanks for joining.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Oh, we did have, I'm sorry, Pat, we did have one last thing we were supposed to announce.
Oh, shit.
I had a little birthday wish to send out. Happy birthday to Melanie over on Melanie Loves Death Metal. Today is her actual birthday.
Happy birthday, Mel. Don't break the spanking machine. might get it smoking, though, right?
Now I'm just picturing something with lots of gears and a giant ping pong paddle attached to it.
There's multiple. It's like a spinning. Yeah.
Oh, you're going like hardcore here.
When you get past a certain age, they need to double the paddles just to make a dent. Well, it's great to see you, Pat, and happy birthday, Mel. It's awesome. Congratulations. And yeah, so Pat came up with kind of a fun topic. I know how I took it. I took it as, well, why don't you talk about it, Pat? What was your thoughts behind this?
So my original thought was to talk about, I hate the fact that I'm not in the center. There we go. This is new setup. My original thought was like, I wanted to talk about what we were into our senior year of high school. And apparently that was already explored with the esteemed guest Chromie. So my next thought, because I'm not good with those, I think the year album things are cool as an observer, but for me to go and like think like, okay, what came out? There's obviously a couple of really big flagship years like 89, 91, all that kind of stuff, 82, but random years, I'm not so good with just pulling stuff out of my ass. So I thought the next other landmark time in one's life other than senior year of high school is probably turning 21. And I know for me, it was a pretty big deal because I had just moved to Boston. I was very involved in the scene there. I was getting into a lot of different stuff. And it was a very important year in my life as far as like being into music and being involved in a music scene and that sort of stuff. So that's what I was thinking, like what your 15 or so albums when you were around 21 years of age, it's not usually a wild time, at least in America, because we become drinking age and stuff like that. So, that may affect things. It may not. I know with me, it kind of did, so.
Right on. How did you take this one, Alan? How did you size this up?
Yeah, I thought it was a very fun idea for a topic. Definitely, kind of one of those nostalgic ages that, yes, a lot of people can relate to, especially like you said, Pat, in the U.S., because it's where you can legally drink. If you're in college, it's also where you're wrapping up college, typically kind of, maybe stepping out into the real world for the first time after that. I kind of took this as looking at things from, around that time frame. Obviously, it's been a few years since 21, so I don't remember the exact playlist from that week or anything. But I just was kind of things like, what kind of things were I playing a lot leading up to turning 21? And what kind of things was I playing a whole bunch of, in the months that followed? So this is kind of, a playlist snapshot from probably not a full 6 months on either side of my 21st birthday, but you're in that general window of time. And it is a window where, I went through some particular changes because I was, graduating college, moving out of Ohio, moving to Texas. So there was a big relocation and a big change in the, music scene in terms of what the local stores tended to carry and all that. So the stuff that was available to me to pick up changed quite a bit that year, as we'll see as we work through this list. But Marty, how did you tackle this particular topic?
Well, I looked at it simply as I turned 21 in 1992, and big time in my life, I guess, the fact that I was working at a job outside of my family's business for the first time. I worked at Kmart. I was doing quite well there. I was like the layout guy. I was setting up all the shelf plans and stuff. And I had my own paycheck. Obviously, I was making money and didn't have rent. My parents were kind. They weren't sticking a boot to me to leave, and they weren't making it hard for me to save and make money. So I had a lot of money to blow here and there, which wasn't smart, but I started looking at the year and doing a little research and find out it's quite an amazing year for death metal. And it made it easy because all the stuff that was coming out in 92, I was devouring. I was just all these things I picked tonight are huge, and they're things you've seen on the channel before. A lot of classics, some we haven't talked about, and there's even some things in '91 that came out either mid or late '91 that I was still very much incessantly spinning. So I look back on it very fond. I 21. I wasn't a huge drinker. I was finally starting to go to bars and stuff. But I was working with a lot of cool people at Kmart and had a community of people I was hanging out with and, doing fun things with. And, so it was an interesting time of life. I did not take the college path. I was eager to get out of school and not go back. So I chose the hard road. Not that college is easy, but typically you get a job after college. It pays you a lot more money. I worked hard for chicken scratchings for a lot of years. So, but still I was happy with the choice, and man, there's some awesome stuff I get to show and talk about tonight. So that's very cool. It ended up being a year episode for me, but it worked out perfectly. What a perfect year to talk about.
No, that's cool. Just I'm chuckling at Hattori's comment here. When you are stirring your mixed drinks with the complimentary shampoo bottle, you are finding a way to make it work. We salute you.
Awesome. I had some friends that they worked at Software, etc., and our buddy Josh turned 21, and they got him all drunk and were mixing in Pepto shots. Pepto-Bismol with vodka.
That's at least thinking ahead,
It's gross, though. I mean, can you imagine drinking that shot of Pepto with vodka in it? Oh my God, it's evil. The thing people do to each other. But so I mean, I've got a shit ton of stuff to talk about, and might as well get started on this. Unless anybody has anything else to pontificate upon before we begin. Pat, you might as well get us rolling here.
Yeah. Okay. To provide a little background, real quick, like I had just moved to Boston. I lived out of my parents' house on and off for like 3 years. Tried the college thing, didn't work out for me. Then I went back years later, just to set the background here. And I was really involved in DIY punk, hardcore. Played a lot of basement shows. I got really into crust the years prior, like 97, 98. Getting into crust punk had kind of led me back to metal. Like a lot of people that got into the hardcore scene and the punk scene when I did, I graduated in 96. My generation of people were people that I think like cut our teeth on Sepultura and Pantera and maybe Prong and Metallica, of course, when we were like in our early teens. And then, I mean, I was already into GBH and the Exploited, but like Rancid came out, NoFX came out, and that kind of like got people excited about punk again, Green Day, and all that kind of stuff. So I was involved in that, and I was kind of rediscovering a lot of metal, the classics that I grew up with, and finding stuff that I had not found previously. So a good example, and of course, this is like downloading is just kind of starting around this time, 99. Like I think I want to say like all those file sharing services were just getting off just starting, so it wasn't as easily accessible. So the first Sodom that I got was Agent Orange. I picked this up on cassette. This was also the year or years that cassettes were going out of phase and were super cheap everywhere. I've got a lot of examples of this. Some of them are the original tapes from back then. But I remember picking this up on tape and loving it. I didn't really have any context for Sodom. Like I'd heard about them in Metal Maniacs, of course. I didn't know that they were like a pioneering proto black metal band at one point. I might have I think I read Lords of Chaos at that point, but I don't remember anything about them. And this is a super tight, like way more American influenced thrash metal record, which freaking rules. I mean, it's got a lot of different flavors on it. My favorite being Ausgebombed, which is, the super punk, like Motorhead kind of song on
Fish
here.
shaking, beer drinking track.
I mean, I'm a sucker for shit like that. That ended up on a ton of mixtapes. So this was a big one for me. And I kind of went backwards from there. I think I didn't hear the really early stuff, like the black metal-ish stuff till way, way later. But yeah, I went in reverse order with Sodom after this. So love this record though. And when I was on a panel, was it with Jammed Out All Badass with Roy from Necroharmonic and a bunch of real serious dudes talking about their favorite Sodom records. And I said this one was mine, and I felt like I felt very small.
Were they whispering poser under their breath?
Kind of evil. It was just like, yeah, I like the really clean one. It's well produced.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll see myself out. I'm only 42. I gotta go. Anyway.
Awesome. All right, Alan, where are you firing off with here?
Well, let's see. For context here, again, I turned 21 in late 95, and fall of 95, spring of 96 was my senior year at college. So, kind of a good year in multiple ways, getting that wrapped up and all. Local record stores had a decent amount of metal, although some styles were a lot easier to find than others. They didn't necessarily have, the widest selection unless you wanted death metal. What else? Did not drink a ton around that time. I was not a big drinker as an undergrad. Some here, some there. Coming into senior year, I was dating a girl who really was not into drinking at all. So, if I went out, I might have like a beer or something. So yeah, it wasn't a whole lot of that, but probably the big metal release. Yeah, we'll start with this one. Kind of the big metal release around that time for me was Iced Earth's third album, Burnt Offerings. I discovered this band a few years earlier, really loved their first two albums, and the college radio station had got a promo for this one, and so they'd been playing some of these songs back in the spring, and I was devouring them, sitting there taping the songs, off of the Friday, Saturday night metal show. And loved the songs, wanted a copy of it, but this was the kind of thing that none of the local stores ever got. And back then, it wasn't a very easy thing to find out the exact release date. So I didn't know if this had already come out, if it was going to come out. It could have been 6 months away for all I knew. So it took a while to get it. I ended up picking up a copy in August of 95. We made kind of a quick trip up to Toledo. I think it was like a few days before the semester started or something, and one of the stores there had it, so I snapped it up right away, and instantly loved it. Played it to death that year. The only thing that ever pissed me off was like when we got it back, to the dorm, I flopped down on the bed to play it right away. I took the booklet out to kind of follow along with the lyrics, but I kind of leaned on it a little bit, and so it's got a crimp.
Oops,
right through the middle. So I basically slightly fucked up the booklet basically almost as soon as I had the cellophane off of it. But I played this, a huge amount in that late 95, early 96 timeframe. For a very long time, this was my favorite album of the decade. When doing, favorite 90s metal albums, for years and years, Burnt Offerings was my number one choice. I thought it was the best album the band had done to date. I think they really dropped off after this. They had some more good albums here and there, but I don't think they ever matched those first three albums. This, of course, was the first one with Matt Barlow on vocals. He did a great job. And just a fantastically well put together album. Now, in more recent years, this one has kind of slid down my list a little bit. It might still be in my top 10 from the 90s. It might not quite make that cut anymore. Some others have just held up over time much better. Yeah, this was a huge part of my soundtrack for that fall, right before, during, and after I turned 21. So that, big one for me from that time. And now, Marty, time to see where you're going to start with this.
Well, thinking about what was going on in 92, when this album came out, my friend Scott dubbed it for me on cassette, so it took me a minute to get the actual CD, but when I finally did, this thing did not leave my player it came out mid 91 and all 91 into 92 and 93. Necroticism, Descanting the Insalubrious by Carcass. Yeah. Oh my God. I wore that tape out. What was on the other side? He put that on one side and Entomb's Clandestine on the other side. But yeah, this turned up in Camelot, finally snagged a copy of it, and holy crap. I mean, even to this day, I struggle to pick either this or Symphonies of Sickness is my favorite, but this was the soundtrack of the early 90s for me. I loved this band at this time. That Jeff's gristled screaming style, and their music is getting a little bit more refined. It's still really nasty death metal with some grind elements, and just the production got better. This band spoke to me. This is what I wanted to hear, 100%. And yeah, the earache era was really hitting me hard in the 90s for sure. But yep, this one did not leave my player. It was always in the vehicle, going back and forth to work, at home, trying to figure out riffs. And even today in the first album, the Glorious Dead album, there's a song I wrote half of. The riffs are like, so this album, it's not even funny. It's damn near plagiarism. It wasn't intentional. It just, becomes part of your DNA. It's what happens. It comes out. So, but yep, Carcass Necroticism, love, 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 love. Still to this day, love it. That was 92 for me.
Nice. Yes. 92 was like I said, it was my freshman year of high school. And I mean, Metal Maniacs was my Bible. And I don't know if you remember this, Marty. I know it was before you started writing for them, but there was a lot of controversy over, I don't know if it was Borahov, or I'm probably saying his name wrong. Borovoy or other writers, but for some reason, Cannibal Corpse and Carcass got slagged off in that magazine a lot for being cheesy. I think it had something to do with the fact that Carcass used pitch shifting and like some of their really early stuff on their vocals, but like they couldn't say shit when Necroticism came out. Like, like it was just, it's so technical but catchy, like I can take or leave a lot of stuff that's excessively technical, but goddamn, it's just a tour de force, that record. It's probably my favorite still. I loved it then. I love it now. The Tools of the Trade EP is fun, killer too.
Yeah, really good.
Okay, so my pick this go round. Speaking of, this is an original cassette that I picked up at Newbury Comics. If you're familiar with Boston music, not just hardcore, but like they did some indie rock stuff and even a few like weird funk thrash bands like Maelstrom and stuff. There was Tang Records out of Boston that moved to LA. A lot of weird stories about the guy who ran the label, like he was supposedly maybe a bit of a ripoff according to some people in bands and stuff like that. Interesting label, local label that put out a lot of stuff, but they put out the Poison Idea Pick Your King tape cassette album. It might have originally come out on something else, I'm not sure, but the first string of early Poison Idea records all came out on Tang, or were released on Tang. And you see this left and right nowadays, especially with the full print of the album cover on the cassette shell and everything, but this is on a black cassette. A lot of their cassettes were yellow and blue and stuff. I got this and a bunch of Slapshot stuff on tape at Newbury Comics, which turned out to be my employer years later, for pennies on the dollar, real cheap. Poison Idea, if you like early 80s American hardcore and you're not a fan, you should probably backtrack and check it out. If you like fast, raw, dirty 80s hardcore, early DRI before they were metal, Negative Effects, the Neos, stuff like that, proto, almost kind of blast beat fast, sorta kind of stuff, kind of along the same lines as all the bands that I mentioned. Poison Idea are a lot of people that are into this type of like hardcore punk, like the best band to do this style. They developed more as time went on and got more of like, it's weird because they got more rock and roll and metal in the right ways. A lot of hardcore bands crossed over into metal and it was a bad mistake for some of them. Poison Idea always just involved more of like a Motorhead kind of vibe and like some cool solos and never like really overdid it. Their full length from years later, which is called Feel the Darkness, is a classic for that style. Way more fleshed out. This is just like unbridled, fast, raw, angry, tight. Also very, very, very airtight. Quick songs, rip your face off kind of hardcore stuff from the Pacific Northwest. And it's great. If you are looking to get into music like that, and maybe all you know is like DRI and COC maybe or something, or you only know newer bands if you happen to be younger or whatever, Poison Idea is a great must-visit band for that kind of style.
I have War All the Time, and I love it. And I've always been meaning to fill in the rest of the holes, but I go to the stores that have their records, I look at them, I'm like, I don't know which one to get because some of them look a little weird. Like the covers
Yeah.
don't look like it might be necessarily straight up punk. So
Yeah,
I need to get notes from you on my transition into that stuff because
most of their stuff you can't go wrong with. Even their later stuff
Okay.
is respectable. I think the latest Will and Testament was their last one before Pig Champion died, and if I'm right, and that one's pretty decent. But yeah, I mean, anything that was on Tang, I mean, Feel the Darkness is probably my favorite, but most of their records are sick. They're really, really good.
yeah, War All the Time's great. It's produced really well. Like you said, it's tight. It
Yep.
sounds fresh. I mean, they're from Portland, Oregon, so it's
Yep.
not like they're leeching off the LA scene or the
Nope.
the New York scene or none of that shit. It's
Yeah,
they have kind of their own thing going, which is I always thought was really great.
really dark.
Yeah.
There's no posy energy on this at all.
No.
I mean, there were Boston bands that were like negative and violent, but they were straight edge or whatever, like Negative Effects and bands like that. Like the Poison Idea and Negative Approach, like it doesn't get much darker and more negative like than those two. Just as far as atmosphere goes, like really, really repressed anger seeping out of all corners. It's awesome shit.
Very cool. All right, Alan.
This one. Oh, we got the beer part started here. Hadn't had this before. Sour, mango, orange, passion fruit. That's a lot of fruit in here. It was on sale at the grocery store and sounded interesting. Oh yeah, that hits you kind of funny going down.
That's a heartburn in a can coming at you.
That's a lot of fruity stuff going on. All right. For number 2, I'm obligated to go with a non-metal pick because as my birthday present for turning 21, my then girlfriend got us tickets to go to a quote-unquote big concert. We both obviously liked music a lot and, had been to some smaller shows, just in very small places around the area. But neither of us had ever really been to like, a big concert thing. So, she had kind of been checking around looking for something that seemed kind of interesting that was in the area. And so we ended up going to the, what was that place called? It's in Cleveland, the Blossom Theater, I think. Blossom or Bloom, something like that. And she bought, tickets, and we went to see this band who was a big deal at the time. They were a little bit of a flash in the pan overall, but they were touring, supporting their big hit album at the time. The band was called Live. The album was called Throwing Copper. They were just the epitome of a mid-90s MTV alternative band.
Yeah.
They had been around for a while, it turned out. They weren't a new band on the scene. But this particular album was the one that kind of finally broke big and sold 8 million copies and was number 1 on MTV for weeks in a row. They were okay. I think I owned the album at some point. I had completely forgotten about it until I was thinking about stuff for tonight. It's like, oh yeah, actually, I got concert tickets for my 21st birthday. So we drove over to Cleveland and saw them play. It was big outdoor kind of thing. I remember them being decent. We had a good time. I could actually go up to the beer vendor and get a beer because I was 21. So we had a good time with it. I have no idea who opened for them or anything, but yeah, their big hit song was called
Lightning Crashes.
Crashes. Yep, that's the one. They had a couple of other minor hits, but that was the song that had been a big deal. And again, this actually came out in 94. So, we saw them in fall of 95, and they were basically still touring and doing pretty well off the back of this album. I don't think they had much success after this point. This was one of the last sort of like popular releases I paid or any mind to. I was already not buying this kind of stuff much, and moving forward, once I moved out of Ohio, really quit paying attention to any kind of mainstream music and just dived more and more into heavy metal stuff. But nevertheless, it was kind of a fun way to go hang out. Got to go to a bigger concert venue for the first time. A nice birthday present from her, and we had a good trip of it, checking out a band that we were both. Neither of us were huge live fans or anything. It was just the only big concert going on in like a 3-hour driving radius, where it was on a weekend that, neither of us had anything going on campus. So it's like, okay, we'll get these tickets and we'll go that weekend and have a good time with it. So yeah, a one-off from being 21.
Right on.
Oh, that's a lot of fruit. Whoa. I'm going to get used to it before the night's over, but we'll take a few sips.
I like that live band. I remember just liking their singles on MTV. I never really owned anything by them, but they remind me of a time that like it was right before like college rock kind of was like college rock as a sound kind of got phased out.
Yep.
And then like bands like REM and stuff like that. And then it kind of became more about grunge, I guess. And then just kind of like new metal. I don't know exactly what came after, but yeah, definitely mid-90s alternative, even though it was on MTV constantly.
Yep. Alternative to what? We were never clear about.
I'm more of a Ned's Atomic Dustbin kind of guy myself, but I mean, and I'm not kidding, that record rules. But yeah, good era for sure.
And Mel is encouraging Alan to drink 3 more cans of beer and get hammered tonight.
No, we're going to space these out a little bit. I think we'll see. Maybe if enough of the sour flavor will eventually kill off some of the taste buds, and we'll go a little faster.
Give it to about a half a can, then you'll have a good see if it's going to get any better or not.
I didn't look at the alcohol content. I should probably figure that out while I'm you're telling us about your next choice, Marty.
We'll be able to tell if it's high here soon enough.
What are you talking about, you son of a bitch?
Yep.
Yeah.
What are you imitating me from 4 years ago?
Both of us. Holy shit. Anyway, okay. Another 91 release. It was eating up all my stereo equipment, and came out in October. And it was this gem, Pungent Stench, Been Caught Buttering. Holy crap-a-moly. I spun this so much. It doesn't get much more filthy and sick than this record. It really doesn't. The guitar tone just sounds like it's just grating chainsaw style. So lo-fi. It's like the Abaddon from Venom drum aesthetic where the timing sucks. The playing sucks. A sack of potato rolling down the stairs sounds like the double bass drums. But man, this is as sick as the album cover art is. And this band never got as good as this. This was, to me, their high point. Their first 2 records are great. I do like some of the stuff that came after it. It just started to get, the newness kind of wore off. They started to get a little more rock and rolly too, which kind of bugged me a little bit. I don't know if that was bleeding over a bit from the Entombed trajectory. Probably that band infected a lot of the death metal scene with rock and roll, which is fine. It's great. Some bands did it good, some didn't. But Pungent Stench, wow, this thing here was 100% a playlist item for me going through 1992 for sure. Been Caught Buttering, Pungent Stench.
Yet another death metal classic that I just didn't get around to hearing until I was like in my 30s. Like I always wanted to hear it. But I think I heard songs on compilations, but getting the full album, I don't think I got it until like maybe 10 years ago or something like that, which is a shame. And I do like some of their later stuff, but it is getting different. They're getting really silly. the dirty rhymes and psychotronic beats and all that kind of stuff.
Why Won't the Bodies Fly? That techno weird song. It's just demented and twisted and
Joel Peter Witkin, hell yeah. I used to have just like Joel Peter Witkin printed pictures like hanging up in my room when I was an edgelord in my actually around the time I was listening to a lot of stuff on this playlist. He was an artist that he was a professor at SU, I think, at Syracuse University, where I grew up at one point or another. But yeah, brilliant stuff. Art with Corpses, fucking wild.
Yeah, he sawed this head in half and
made him make out. And there's like the cover of that Decapitate. I think it's Decapitated. Yeah, it's just a good decapitated like obese guy like sitting in a chair or whatever.
Oh yeah.
That's him too. But anyways,
all right.
Where should I go from here? Oh, this will spice things up a little bit. So, in my way of like rediscovering metal, like a lot of crusties at the time, black metal was getting to be cool, and I had certain people introducing me to different things. There was a guy that actually was known, like his nickname was Satan. He was this punker from Albany that was really into black metal and taped me a bunch of stuff. And there were a few things that I ventured out into some weird territories that I didn't go any further, but I really liked like one album. And a good example of that is Tristania's Beyond the Veil from 1998. I love this. Yeah. I don't know if I love it as much. I did rebuy this. Like this is, I purchased it again like 3 or 4 years ago because I saw it at a record store in Salem when I still lived there and was like, all right. But I mean, I used to just imbibe marijuana heavily and play Final Fantasy VII and listen to this operatic death metal goodness. I mean, you know, it's cheesy and it's operatic. It's very expansive sounding and epic and stuff. Melodic orchestral death metal. I never even got into Therion or anything like that. I just really liked this record and I listened to it constantly. Then I don't really have much other commentary than that.
Yeah, that cover really rings a lot of bells. I don't know if it passed through my promo inbox and I just never dug into it or what.
I mean, it's cheesy, but it's really well done. The production's really good. It's, you know, growly vocals, but like, you know, like operatic female backing vocals and lots and lots of
that was all the rage. That was the rage, man.
They were, there was definitely a thing back then.
Orphanage, another band, Orphanage, did that really well.
Oh yeah, there we go. That's there's some drama majors right there.
They look like they all look like probably like 50 other bands during that time.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
You got the one guy with light colored or blonde hair that's really long, and the chick in the goth garb, and it's all great.
Yeah, we wear black on the outside because we feel black on the inside.
Exactly.
Well, they're like wearing like drow makeup or something. Like they're all wearing like something to make themselves look like weirdly ashen and copper toned, to the point where if the hue were a little different, it would be like really not cool by today's standards, if you know what I mean. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. Like I like anything fantasy themed, you know. So
as long as they're not sacrificing things to a spider goddess, we're okay.
Nope. I swore off making sacrifices to Lolth a long time ago.
All right, Ellen.
It's 5.5%. So
it's just a half more than this fruity.
This is 8.4.
Blow to my liver.
Pat wins.
Yeah, I win. My liver doesn't win.
All right, let's see. Another one connected to my 21st birthday. This was given to me as a present. Now, I have to show just kind of a picture of it. I don't have a single disc. It's Opth's Orchid. Now, this is from the 3-disc reissue. But got a copy of their first album, Orchid, for my birthday from my girlfriend's father. And this was kind of a roundabout thing because obviously she, you know, picked it out, bought it, you know, he gave her the money and signed his name. She picked this to get on his behalf because it didn't look very heavy whatsoever. And as such, she knew he wouldn't have a problem with it. You know, he was a nice enough guy, but, you know, she couldn't exactly walk in and be like, you know, hey, I just got my boyfriend the new Deicide album, Once Upon a Cross. You want to give that to him? That would not have worked whatsoever. So she's like, this doesn't look threatening in any way, shape, or form. And it's a cool band. So guess what? You're getting this from Daddy. Happy birthday. And, you know, it worked out okay. I don't mind that Opth album. You know, Opth famously not really my favorite band of all time, not even close, but I didn't mind the first couple of albums. I did play Orchid a good amount, and I eventually got rid of that copy, but, you know, when this, it's the Candlelight years, so it has the first 3 albums in one big CD set. I don't mind having that around.
Yeah, I really actually liked Orchid a lot, and it was that punk Satan who taped me a whole bunch of stuff, everything from like Abigor to that to early Enslaved. I think he taped me Eld and like Balsagoth So I had all that stuff on deck. Unfortunately, I was very irresponsible at the time and like lost all of them somehow. But yeah, I remember liking Orchid a lot. And then years later, when Opth blew up, I was like, okay. So I guess they really went in that prog direction, huh? Okay.
Cool. Yeah. It kind of felt over time like, Opth, put out albums pretty rapidly. They were a little hard to get. They were a little expensive, and I didn't like them quite as much as everybody else seemed to. So they were one of those bands that started irritating me because everybody else was talking like they were the second coming. And I'm like, it's all right, but I don't feel like it's reinvented, recorded sound as we knew it or anything. So yeah, they kind of grated on my nerves a little bit, not for anything they were doing, just because for the way they were getting just ridiculously pumped up by people, album after album after album. So, but yeah, Orchid is an all right one, and it was a present for my 21st birthday. So there we go.
All right. Well, I'm skipping the others I have for 91. It doesn't matter. The 92 stuff is too good to not get to all of it. So, man, love this band. You know what? I've mentioned it on here before. Not a lot of people talk about Grave anymore. What's up with that? But
they
anyway,
got a lot of hype at the time. They were definitely talked up and advertised a ton back then. But yeah, they sort of seem to have second tier status now. You're not wrong.
Yep. Grave You'll Never See. This is their second full length album. I love them up through Soulless, including Soulless. That's when they got a little groovy, but still it rules. They came back. They broke up for a while. They came back and continue putting out good records. They're not as good as the first three, but still good. Maybe that's why they've kind of fallen out of the public eye, because their new stuff just didn't have the riz. Is that what I meant? Is that what all the kids are saying nowadays?
No cap.
Yeah, no cap. Yeah. But this stuff was in my CD player a lot. I loved how groovy and brutal they were, and really simplistic, but wrote really good songs. So I would, if you put this next to an Obituary CD, I think they would probably exist in a similar realm. I pick Grave every time. Every time. I think they're just more interesting, heavier. Grave. Good stuff. You Will Never See.
Yeah, I like that record too. Grave was always at the like ugly step cousin kind of to all this big Swedish bands for me. I always I went by certain reviewers and Metal Maniacs or maybe some other publications at the time that were just like, yeah, all these bands like ripping off Entombed, and they really weren't. Like, they had a kind of a similar guitar tone in the beginning, but they were way heavier and slower. And I mean, yeah, again, it took me a while to really come around to them, like until revisiting death metal in my early 30s or something like that. But all that, yeah, up to Soulless is dope for sure.
Yep.
All right. So if you'll remember, in the late 90s, actually, I think Relapse has continued to do this throughout the years, but they put out a string of reissuing some hardcore punk classics that were big influences on grind and death metal and some other stuff. The first time I ever heard Siege from Boston, who were, proto grind hardcore stuff, Relapse reissued it sometime in the mid 90s, I want to say. And then I want to say mid to late 90s, they reissued this. This is Final Conflict, Ashes to Ashes. This was reissued. I got it on cassette.
I have it on cassette too.
I bought it at the Worcester Palladium along with Repulsion's Horrified for super cheap, like $5 each or something like that.
From the Relapse table?
Yep.
Yeah, I bought, I got a lot of cool stuff from Pandemonium tapes for $1 and all this other shit.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
And this is a copy that I bought from a kid in Boston. It's actually, this originally came out on Pussmort, which was Pusshead's label. This might be worth a fair amount. I don't care. I'm never getting rid of it. It's one of my favorite hardcore punk records from the 80s. And people have called it crossover. I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I don't get the crossover there.
I'd say it approaches it. There's some good soloing and stuff like that. The production's really good for hardcore punk from that era.
Yeah.
It's super tight. I'd say it almost has metal level musicianship, which is something I throw on hardcore bands a lot. They could really play. They were tight and stuff like that. But the strong Discharge influence, maybe approaching something like early Broken Bones or something along those lines, kind of. But Californian too. You could hear a certain like kind of Cali tunefulness in it, especially in that song Private War, which almost like leans into almost sort of like an oi chorus a little bit. But yeah, I mean, really well written, fast, thrashing, but not thrash metal kind of punk stuff. Very, war bad, spiky hair, that kind of thing going on. Like a lot of their compatriots, like Crucifix, who are also from California, like along the same lines. Killer stuff. Like one of the best records of this style, I think, ever. And around this time, they were back together and gigging, and had played Boston like right before I moved there, and I missed them. So that sucks. I did see them. I saw them at a Chaos and Teos, I want to say, over 10 years ago, and they were pretty good. So yeah, great kind of, chaos punk, fast, butt tight stuff from California. Final Conflict, Ashes to Ashes.
Right on. Okay, Alan.
All right. So a couple of months after my 21st birthday, ended up doing a road trip to a paleontology conference with a couple of other students. Let me think. I think it was literally like the morning of November 1st. So of course everyone's out partying, Halloween night. And then we had to get up at like 5 a.m. the next morning, drive across Ohio to Pittsburgh for like a 3-day professional conference. And we were going as undergrads, which was a little unusual for this conference at the time. It was mostly professors and grad students. So we were in a little over our heads, but it was close enough to check out. We were really excited to do so. And on that road trip, my buddy Matt was driving, and he introduced me to 2 bands that have stuck with me all this time. So the first of those were Misfits. I had heard the name a lot, but never really checked them out. Matt was a huge Misfits fan. He had a Crimson Ghost, emblazoned on his leather jacket. It was actually how we kind of ended up, connecting in class at some point. We'd seen each other enough classes, and somehow it came up. It's just like, hey, I like the thing on your jacket. He's like, oh yeah, it's the Crimson Ghost. Like, yeah, no, it's the old Republic, serial horror villain. He's just like, holy shit, how do you know what that is? Most people just think it's like a punk thing. I'm just like, but yeah, I know it's a punk thing too, but I also know it's from the Republic serial. And we got along famously for the past 30 some years ever since. But I never heard the band much. He had this in the car, and so ended up playing it. And it was just like, where has this band been all my life? It was perfect for me. They had, all these kind of, 50s throwback kind of sounds worked into their melodies and everything.
Yeah.
Which, I grew up listening to that stuff with my dad, but, also just, this, great, hardcore sound, crazy, look with all the skeletons and stuff. And yeah, just as soon as we got back from that trip, went to the local record store, bought my own copy of Legacy of Brutality, and kind of went down the rabbit hole pretty quickly from there, which I looked out a bit. It wasn't too long after that the Misfits box set came out, the big coffin box set, because that was right around the time the band was starting to get back together and getting ready to go back out on tour for the first time with Michael Graves. So it was kind of the perfect time to get into the band, since a lot of their stuff was suddenly readily available. But yeah, this was the first thing I got to hear from them right there, right after turning 21 years old. And my girlfriend's roommate at the time was really into this band too. So that gave me, another reason to hang out over there with them a whole bunch. She was a lot more into sort of, punk, hardcore, a little bit of like industrial electronic stuff rather than metal. Yeah, but there's enough overlap there that we could communicate with each other. So yeah, she was pretty cool. So yeah, the Misfits was a huge discovery for me when I was 21 years old. And when we did our favorite bands of all time, this was in my top 3. So literally one of my favorite bands that has ever walked among us.
Ayo.
Hey, Pat got it. Absolutely.
I just got a brand new Misfit shirt because I was on vacation and didn't pack enough. And my wife ran to Walmart to get us some stuff. And I was like, can you just grab me a shirt? Like just nothing too embarrassing, like just a t-shirt of some kind. And she's like, Misfits shirt? I was like, oh yeah, of course. Because they they're like Kiss now. There's shits
They
everywhere.
have that at Walmart. I was at the grocery store a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, somebody, just a very normal looking woman, pushing a grocery cart with like her elderly mother, is wearing like a purple tie-dyed, Crimson Ghost shirt. I'm just like, I don't know if that's cool or if I'm supposed to like start screaming at them as some kind of gatekeeper or something.
Nah, not with that band. I mean, they're a brilliant band, and
Yeah.
I think they're popular for a reason, but like their merchandising stuff is to the level of Kiss. That's just the way. What's funny about the shirt thing is that also Amanda got me a whole bunch of Misfits socks from like Temu or one of those websites, like for Christmas.
They turn your feet green.
No, they're fine. They don't do that, thankfully. But you can pull them up, and they've got the Crimson Ghost. Like if you want to wear hiked up socks, like an LA skater. And I had those too. And my wife was like, "What? You're not going to wear your socks with the shirt?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can wear those Crocs that I bought too, and be a real asshole." No, I'm not wearing all of them. I'm good. Anyway.
So remember, you need the khaki shorts to tie it all together.
Yeah,
with the skinny little elastic belt.
Yep. Well, it's I live in the Carolinas now, so I need salmon shorts that are like uncomfortably above the knee.
Oh god, the Carolinas' obsession with pastel colors and the like for men's clothing will never ever make any sense to me.
So Alan, let me ask you this question. You say you love the 50s throwback stuff. Are you a Ramones fan?
Not as much, really. And to be honest, the Ramones is one of those bands I probably should like.
I tried. I like a couple songs, but I'm
on
not a fan.
paper, on paper, everything lines up just right. And I don't mind them. If someone's playing Ramones, like, oh, cool, Ramones. I'm not going to tell you to take it off. I'm never really going to pull them off the shelf to play myself, though. For something about them, I think what it is with Ramones, it's one of those bands where they were always talked up to me as this insanely fast band. And they were at the time they came out. But when I was, then hearing this stuff and then check them out, it was, again, in the 1990s. I'm just like, this isn't fast. What the fuck are you people talking about?
They are quickly
because I'm
overcome.
comparing it to, the last 20 years worth of, speed metal and death metal and everything. And so they didn't really hold up in hindsight, looking at them through that lens. It was just the wrong introduction to them.
My context for the Ramones that always made them work for me was the first record that I bought by them was Loco Live, which is, I think, 89. It's live in Barcelona, Spain. It's super raw, and everything is at like 3 times speed. Like it's, and the thing with all the records are great, but I don't know. I don't want to be too blasphemous and say like a lot of their records have filler songs, but their banger songs are bangers, like really good, Psychotherapy, Blitzkrieg Bop, all the big ones.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of the songs on those records where they're like really slow, like doo-wop songs and shit. And I know people like that stuff, but the thing is, there's some stuff from like their weird era, like their mid-period, like Animal Boy, and even like their stuff into the early 90s where they have a few rager songs. Like look up the song Warthog. It's like a hardcore song. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
Stuff like that fucking rules. But they are like a you got to be kind of choosy about it with me kind of band. I mean, the one for me is Rocket to Russia is my go-to studio album of theirs. But that Loco Live record is a face ripper. It's great.
I'll have to keep an eye out for that one. Cool.
Yeah, for me, it seems like they always kind of ripped off the same 2 old rock and roll songs.
Oh yeah,
That
was kind of their appeal, is that they were freaking mongoloid idiots from Queens who were just like, just like bashed out like 3. It was supposed to be like brilliant in its stupidity and simplicity,
Yeah, I get the appeal, and like I said, I mean, I would never take anything away from them or detract from them. It's just like, when everyone keeps telling me the selling point is how fast they can play, but you're hearing them, 20 years after they were a thing. Sure. That doesn't work. That's not going to impress a kid in the, who's 21 in the mid 90s. Fast enough. There's not really that much velocity to wow you with anymore.
It was tough for me because I heard them mentioned. I don't want to waylay this conversation too long. Cool. I heard them mentioned as like this in the same context as like Motorhead, and I know that like Lemmy and Joey were friends and stuff like that, but like, and I get like maybe the first, the self-titled or like On Parole, it's like return to roots rock and roll and kind of ties in with the punk thing, but they're very different. They went like this like pretty quickly. So
Yep.
you know, for me, I heard Motorhead first, and that was like the era of like 1916 coming out, and then I heard some of the early studio Ramones stuff, and it was not like that. So,
yeah, when those kind of comparisons, it's a little tame.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Funny, and again, funny because you brought up Joey. I just heard something very funny on the radio the other day. I think it was Keith Roth telling a story on one of the Sirius XM channels where he was interviewing Joey once, and Alice Cooper was in the studio. Or maybe it was the other way around. Maybe he was interviewing Alice Cooper and Joey Ramone showed up, and was hanging out because he was a fan. And as they were talking, Joey mentioned to Alice, he's like, I just wanted to say that, sometimes, when like I'm really down, really depressed, feeling like crap, I love to listen to one of your albums, and I'm fucking up the title, but what is it? Love the Dead, Born Dead, Born to be Dead. I Love the Dead.
I love
one
the
of those
Dead.
Alice Cooper.
I Love the Dead. Yeah.
I Love the Dead, and he's like, that one just, it always picks me up, and Roth said, Alice just looked at it and just immediately deadpan, no delay whatsoever. He says, like, Joey, I wouldn't tell your therapist that.
Yep.
But there we go. So Marty, get us back on track here. I wandered off into the weeds a little there.
Well, I drug us there. I just wanted to follow up on
okay.
that. I just, I know you like Misfits, and you mentioned the 50s throwback, and first thing that pops in my mind is a Ramones. So I'm just, I've never heard you talk about the Ramones ever, so I was curious.
And you may not hear me talk about them again.
Yeah, me either. Yeah. All right. Well, this album just fucking rules. Gorefest False came out in 1992. Mind-blowing to this day album. Obviously, the first song, The Glorious Dead, it's where my band got our name from. I love this band during this time, and I've never been more disappointed ever when they followed up this amazing album with the album Erase, which is just a groove metal piece of crap. It's just awful. But this album here, some of the most catchy, stripped down, simple, but death metal with such a powerful punch. What's the drummer's name? Ed Wamsley? Ed Warby? It's just precision drummer, fast, technical as hell. He was a technical foundation, and the music they put on top was just down-tuned, heavy, really well written, and I just connected with this thing super hard, and still to this day I love it. I put it on. They broke up, they put out a bunch.
Ready to go.
Marty's been doing that a bit lately, but no worries. We'll give him a chance to reboot. He may have been playing air guitar with his mouse again.
I hate this mouse. This stupid thing.
It was the mouse.
These buttons. I hit this button and it. I need to get a new mouse. Apparently, I need to get my. Anybody have these magic mice? They work great for a minute, then they kind of stop working. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Anyway,
blaming it on the mouse.
Gorefest. False. Get it. It's amazing. If you haven't heard it, it's so good. Oops.
Oh, that's still a lot of fruit. Oh, I thought it'd be getting better by now.
Oops.
Let's see. Pat will be back in a moment, it looks like.
Okay.
So,
well, oops. Damn it. I'm having all sorts of problems here all of a sudden. Here we go. Al, why don't you go next then? We'll we'll stack the order around.
Okay. We're good? You're not going to touch the mouse again, right?
I'm going to try not to. I'm going to move it out of the way. God, that's annoying.
All right. Well, I said last go around that there were two things that I got introduced on that road trip to Pittsburgh. Misfits was the first one. The second one was this album, Matt Broke Out, Bolt Thrower's War Master. I had never heard Bolt Thrower before. And again, it was an instant connection. It's just like, now here's a death metal band I could really get into. By 95, I was pretty sick of a lot of death metal. Death metal was the only thing going in my little corner of Ohio all through college. And, it was interesting at first, but when that's all that you can find at the used record store, and that's, 4 out of every 5 songs they're playing on the college metal radio show every weekend is just, here's Cannibal Corpse, followed by Cannibal Corpse. Next up will be Cannibal Corpse. Yeah, we'll throw in a Sabotage song for this one guy who keeps calling in asking us to play something that's not death metal. And after that, Benediction, followed by Cancer. And then we'll get back to Cannibal Corpse. It got old after a few years. But Bolt Thrower was different, and it wasn't just the whole Warhammer thing and all that. It was just that they were legitimately had their own sound, and there was more of a melody to it. There was a lot more to kind of catch your ear. It wasn't just blasting for the sake of blasting. It wasn't just brutal or gory for the sake of being gory. It's like, these songs I'm actually going to remember after they finish playing. They're not just going to run together in my head. So played this one a lot. And again, we got back from that trip, went to the record store and literally bought these 2 CDs on the exact same day. It would have been about November 4th or November 5th of 1995. And yeah, for a long time, War Master, I would kind of knee-jerk reaction say it was my favorite Bolt Thrower album. Not the case as much these days. I still like it. It still has my favorite song by them in Cenotaph. But yeah, I do like some of their other albums more than War Master at this point. But still, it was just nice at the time to latch on to, okay, there's still some death metal bands out there I need to discover that aren't just running the Cannibal Corpse worship into the ground, because that's really what a lot of it was feeling like by that point for me. A lot of death metal had famously kind of taken a little bit of a turn around 93, and so into 94 and 95 the scene was oversaturated. Even though some good stuff was still coming out, of course, it was getting harder and harder to sift it out, and there were more interesting things starting to happen in other sectors of metal. But that road trip, Misfits and Bolt. Matt, if you're watching, thank you very much. Matt tunes in sometimes. Not really someone to jump in the chat very often. He'd rather just sit and scream at his computer and tell us how stupid we are than have to engage in the chat itself. But Matt, yes, that was a hell of a road trip. I'll have one more thing to show that we came across on that road trip, but I'll save that for, I guess, the next round.
All right. I just sent Pat a message saying what happened, and I haven't heard from him. So
yeah, it looked like his device disconnected, so that may take a moment if he has to like reboot his router or something like that. But we'll try to get him back and running here as soon as we can.
All right. So these two releases came out the same year. We got My Dying Bride. Oh gosh. Symphonaire Infernus et Spira Imperium and As the Flower Withers. These are hands down my 2 favorite My Dying Bride releases. They just are. This is where I started with the band. So there's that connection. Usually where you jump into a band's discography is where you find the most love for it. And this is when they were truly amazing death doom. There's no whiny vocals on here. Aaron's voice is just absolutely crushing, nasty. Sound like it was rototilled up from the earth and half alive, laying there in the dirt. So great. And it was just slow and really mournful death metal, death doom. And I just really connected to both of these. And this one in particular was super unique for the time because they had like an orchestra backing up the main track, the title track. Just really the violins and the timpanis, and it just really brought a very unique sound to, well, I mean, I guess, Celtic Frost tried to do it earlier, but they did it right. These guys did it right. Here, it's just a bit more death metal. The Forever People was the first song I think I ever heard from this band. It's just really simplistic the way he put the words over the music, but with a voice that grim, it just works. It works so well. And I paid like $25 a piece for all the mini CDs that came out during this time. The Thrash of Naked Limbs, I Am the Bloody Earth. Both of those they cost me a lot of money to get them. I was so in love with this band. So that's, Turn Loose the Swans. I also liked. It was a transition. I didn't love his clean vocals, but the album's still great. And it was, we all know, The Angel in the Dark Rivers, where I'm like, oh my God, no, what happened? Why is it happening to me? But these two were huge for me in 1992. I listened to these things a lot. All right. Alan, you're back.
All righty. So yeah, while in Pittsburgh at listening to professors talk about, vertebrate paleontology, eventually they shut up and let you go out and, rub elbows and drink and, do that kind of fun stuff. Matt and I, of course, started hitting record stores in Pittsburgh. And there was a band I had been reading about in Sentinel Steel magazine that sounded really interesting, wanted to check out. One of the members had been in a project before, so this, he kind of had a new band. I liked his previous band, but the new one sounded like it was going in a different direction. So digging around in a store in Pittsburgh, finally had a chance to pick up one of their albums. The band in question is Skyclad. It was Martin Walker's post-Sabbat band, of course.
That's their best album, too.
It's their first album, probably their best. Their debut, Wayward Sons of Mother Earth. This was one that no one in Western Ohio had these CDs whatsoever, but found this used for $8 in a little record store there in Pittsburgh.
Wow, I paid too much money for that one. I had to get it import.
I would have had to have imported. I just got lucky. It was there. I saw it, just like, pulled it out, put it on my stack of, discs to buy. Matt looked at it and he was just like, what the hell is that? I'm just like, trust me, you're going to like it. He's like, okay. And sure enough, back at the hotel that night, we had just a little CD Discman kind of thing. He's like, okay, let me check that out. I'm like, yeah, here you go. He bogarted the Skyclad disc the rest of the weekend, which was, I had, bought other stuff to listen to, but yeah, he immediately clicked with this one. So I was just like, you're right. That's really fucking cool. So yeah, Skyclad, of course, kind of one of the first bands to really start incorporating a lot more folksy stuff into a heavy metal structure. And you combine that, with the, very kind of witty, clever lyrics of Martin, and you had a winning combination. My only gripe, and why I'm showing this on the phone, I eventually got rid of pretty much all the Skyclad discs I had. I liked some of them, but they were another band that were putting out albums very rapidly for a while. And it started to feel more and more like, you're focusing on quantity more than quality. It's like every album had some cool stuff on it, but every album, again, had some songs that just did not seem to come together. And they started to get a little more silly and a little more samey, and I just kind of got burned out on them at some point. So they are not a band I revisit very often anymore. But this one, had the least amount of goofy stuff going on. Had the most hints of the old Sabbath material.
It was like a folkier Dream Weaver.
Yep.
Kind of, yeah. But to be very clear, nobody should buy it expecting it to sound like Dreamweaver. They definitely, it was a new project, with a new sound. But yes, it was the one that harkened back to that era of Sabbath the most. After that, even by albums 2 and 3, they were really taking the witty puns in the song titles and running with that hard in the folk, which again was okay to a point. I just kind of lost interest somewhere along the way.
They lost me at Folkymon.
I was going to say Folkymon. Need I say more?
Yeah.
Folkymon, I think, was the one where they pretty much just finally shot the bed and everyone stopped caring. I had gotten a little tired of their act even before that one came out. So, yeah. This was another one that pretty soon after turning 21 got into heavy rotation for quite a while. Pat,
all right.
To see you back among the living.
So sorry about that.
No worries.
I wanted to show people my cool mouse, which looks like one of the thing, like from the classic. But in doing so, I unplugged all my shit. So that's cool. I'm cool. I'm good at life.
Technology and the elderly. This doesn't link up sometimes.
So for the past 5 minutes or so that I've been away, I've been struggling. For some reason, my really nice digital camera, which is still working fine, got unplugged and doesn't want to play nice anymore. So I'm back to a webcam for the rest of it.
That's what you get for trying to upgrade shit.
Cool. Life is awesome. All right. So I was talking about Motorhead earlier. Is it my turn? It's my turn. Right?
Yes, it is absolutely.
Yes, sir.
your
Oh,
turn.
you got 2 turns.
Take it
to-
away.
Oh,
Yeah.
ooh, all right. We'll see if I can segue.
I think you've got less than what I have here, so we can skip one, I guess.
So around this time I was 21. Obviously, this didn't come out then. This was 1988, I think. But Orgasmatron and Rock and Roll by Motorhead are to this day two of my favorite Motorhead records. I love this period. The 4-piece.
Wurzel.
Yeah, Wurzel, man. Vintage Wurzel, Filthy Animal Taylor. I think he came back. He wasn't on Orgasmatron, I want to say.
Right.
Came back on this one.
Sounds right. Yep. Yep.
And I remember interviews with Max Cavalera saying that like that was his era of Motorhead that he got into and stuff. And there's just some, I mean, you know, you're 21, you're partying and stuff. Like this is a great record for that. The opening track, those opening drums, just the lyrics for Rock and Roll, complete ridiculous. You know, like I like to party, touring the world every day. You know, that kind of shit. All For You. The track "All For You" is almost like kind of, I mean, it's a rocker, but it's kind of a sad love song, sort of. And that's a low rated track. I really, really love that song. The Wolf, Traitor, Traitor, you know, like even something that would be cheesy if any other band did it, like the song Boogeyman, fucking rules because Motorhead played it, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely love this. I got this around the time I turned 21. If I may cram another one in there, since I have
Please do.
I can find it real quick.
Yeah, the only track on Rock and Roll that I'm not really that big a fan of is the single "Eat the Rich." That song has always been a little meh for me. It's
meh,
not bad, but it's.
Have you seen the movie Eat the Rich? It's a British flick. Lemmy's like a main protagonist in it. He's a secret agent, which is hilarious because he's just dressed like Lemmy, like he always is. It's got like a lot of the cast of the young ones in it and stuff like that. And it's about this whole like bourgeoisie overthrowing the rich elite and like eating them, like cooking them in a restaurant and stuff like that. Real wild stuff. Like a lot of British comedies, like it has some really odd parts that are kind of slow and dry.
Yeah,
but some of the one-liners completely make it. I highly recommend it. I have it on.
It's bringing to mind like Eating Raoul or something.
Yeah. It's a cool flick. So around the end of the 90s, Combat Records kind of went. I don't know if it went out of business or it got liquidated into Relativity. And that's when you saw those like best ofs pop up, like Best of Death, Fate, the Best of Possessed. To Be Continued, the Best of Agnostic Front, all those with like the generic like 2-color covers. But Relativity also reissued a few albums that I could never get my hands on, and a few that I'd heard about for years. And one that I was really excited to get was Crumbsucker's Life of Dreams.
That album rules.
God, it's so good. Like
I like Beast on My Back too. Both of them are good.
Like Beast on My Back was a grower for me because it's kind of technical. You know, it's a little bit more mid-paced and stuff like that. I love Life of Dreams.
It rules.
It's got these really like baritone, like hardcore guy kind of vocals, but with completely
kind of Muppety, a little Muppety vibe to his voice.
For sure. But like, you know, those kind of spat fast vocals, but it's not like Kurt from DRI. It's like a gruffer kind of thing. So he's like, you know, like that kind of thing. Rapid Fire. Just great slower mosh parts and stuff like that, you know, skank parts and everything. They were out of Long Island too. They weren't like from, you know, the Lower East Side or anything like that. Gotta love, I mean, obviously I'm a bit of a fan. I've got Crumbsucker's tattoos and stuff, but yeah, this is, I mean, easily a top 10 crossover record. The soloing, awesome. That one music video from whether it's at CBGB's, that's a great, cool, like, you know, stripped down, you know, basic live music video. Cool to watch. Lots of good stage diving and shit. Crumbsucker's Life of Dreams. Another big one.
They were in the area, but you don't hear. I wouldn't have guessed they were in New York. Now that I think about it more, I haven't listened to that album in a while, but they didn't sound like a New York band to me. I don't know. I could be wrong.
They have recordings of their demos that were put out on FOAD, I want to say, and you can hear the evolution out of like kind of more basic, fast, like New York hardcore. Ludacris's early stuff was like that too. Yeah. They're both bands that kind of early examples of like New York City crossover.
Yep.
Both great in my opinion.
Both great. Yeah. All right. Good one. Alan.
All right. Got to step out of the metal realm one more moment. This next one, not metal at all, but I think a lot of metalheads like the band. It came out, I believe this actually came out in spring of '94, but it was huge in that little corner of Ohio and probably lots of other places too. So everybody was still playing it constantly all the way through '95 and '96. They may still be playing it for all I know. Pink Floyd's The Division Bell. Pink Floyd, I mean, it was a college campus, so Pink Floyd, it was pretty low hanging fruit that kids were going to like it in the first place. But yeah, this came out and everybody lost their mind for it. It got tons and tons of play, and this very much became the makeout record for that entire campus for at least 2 years. Forget your Barry Whites. You don't need your smooth jazz. You just go out, drink a few cheap beers, bring her back to the dorm room, slap on a little Division Bell, and things are going to happen. People had so much sex to this album across that campus for
Northern Michigan. They just got stoned. I didn't know about the whole sex thing.
Move over cameo. We got.
Oh no. Maybe they got stoned and had sex too. But whatever you did, whether you got drunk, stoned, or whatever, it always involved in fucking. Lots and lots of fucking. So yeah, you could literally just like go around the dorm halls at night and just kind of listen to see who's got what playing in the room. It's like, okay, AC/DC, okay, don't know what that is. Oh, okay, someone's getting laid in there. That's Division Bell. Oh, hey, they're on the end of Division Bell. I guess he's already come at least once. But all that aside, I actually do like this era of Pink Floyd. Obviously, the David Gilmour albums can be a little bit divisive.
Boring.
Somebody sees what I did there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
I didn't go to college, remember? I'm a little slower on the uptick on some of those.
If you had, you would have heard this album and you would have gotten laid a lot.
Yeah, I doubt it.
But I do like the David Gilmour albums. This and Momentary Lapse of Reason. I've been reading more on Pink Floyd lately, just kind of out of curiosity. And there is a big difference, during this era, compared to the Roger Waters stuff. Waters, was more and more about the lyrics. Waters, was very political, very, motivated to explain and, comment on everything in a very British way. David Gilmour and Nick Mason were a lot more interested in making music. They didn't care as much about, what the singer was saying, which was part of the reason they eventually all had to part company. And you can definitely hear it. These albums, there is a big focus on the music. The lyrics are still quite good. They brought in somebody else to help them with the lyrics after Waters left. But nevertheless, I thought, the Gilmour albums, had a great atmosphere to them. They're still a very good listen. But yes, this album, I mean, in all seriousness, they might as well have just taken that great big giant, pig inflatable that they had from earlier in their career, stuffed it full of condoms, floated it over the campus, and just let it pop like a giant sex pinata. That's what it was like for just
sex
months.
Pig.
Just not you. You want to get laid? You play this album when you bring your date back from being out and about on the town. So yes, a big part of that particular era for me. And hopefully my wife's already distracted with something else in the other part of the house. If not, hey sweetie, I love you. We'll let Marty go ahead and take it away from there, and we'll see if I get yelled at.
Well, in 1992, there was no sex here because I was listening to Amorphous Corellian Isthmus.
Yeah, they don't have an inflatable pig you can stuff full of condoms.
No, they're not. And the Finns, they'd rather drink anyway. But this album, wow. You want to talk about a proper introduction to Finnish death metal? Dark, weird, twisted riffs. This album, I love the vibe and atmosphere on this. Tommy's vocals are so guttural and twisted and agonized. And it's funny. He's just a little guy. Just a little guy. It's amazing. These little guys can have such a, they're pulling this, moist guttural growl out of the bowels of their body. It's just amazing. But I always loved this record. And I wish they would have done one more like this. I do like Tales from a Thousand Lakes. The proggy, 70s-ish keyboard stuff was a tough pill to swallow, but they kept the vocals grim mostly, and the harmonies are just so good. And even on this, the harmonies on here are just very mournful sounding up against... One thing about this album that always kind of bugged me was the drummer. He is not a great drummer. It's kind of like early Paradise Lost to me. Early Paradise Lost, absolutely great, classic stuff with a drummer that just is getting the job done, but he's really, really rudimentary playing. So, I mean, that a little bit more life in the drums could have really taken this over the edge, but it doesn't matter. It just really, this album is just really so well done. This is a Relapse reissue. It's got the Privilege of Evil EP on it as well. So, yep. God, this is so good. So good. 1992. This was in the player all the time as well. All right.
Back to me.
Back to you, sir.
Speaking of terrible death metal drumming, I listened to Necrosanct's Incarnate on the way home.
Yeah.
And like, I remember it being like kind of all over the place, but holy shit, like I had nice earphones I was listening to in the car. I was like, I could play drums better than this. And I cannot, I've never had a listen. Like they sound cool, like they're super echoey, but man, the drums on that, it's like a bad war metal kind of style drumming. Anyway, let's see here. Kind of keep with metal for a little bit. I'm not exactly sure if I was 21 or 22. I think I was still 21. I used to get dragged out to the Worcester Palladium all the time from Boston with the drummer in the band I was in. It was a
cool
crust
place.
band. What's that?
Cool place. I've been there once.
It was for a while. Kind of, I mean, the way they kind of treated bands and like that kind of turned into more of a pay to play kind of situation, like past the 90s, past the early 2000s, but like the early metal and hardcore fests there were pretty cool and everything. But I ended up going along with my drummer who was really into metal way more than I was at the time. And I ended up seeing tons of good bands. I saw Skinless a ton of times and, a lot of that brutal stuff that was blowing up, Skinless, Dying Fetus, all that. And the first time I had a chance to see, and I've talked about this numerous times on my channel, the first black metal show I went to was Satyricon and Immortal. And Satyricon was touring on Rebel Extravaganza, which I like a lot. I've gone back and forth on that record over the years, but I think it's really good.
It hasn't held up well for me, but I loved it when it came out.
But this guy.
Oh my God, that album is so great.
I was listening to black metal before, but the first 3 Satyricon records was like me really falling in love with that sound, that really grim, lo-fi stuff on the first couple. And this is just like a sharp, all-out assault. I still don't understand why they took this sword unsheathing noise out of the reissue of this.
They did?
Yeah. It's not on this. This is
why
a recent
would you do that?
Unlistenable. I forget what this came out on, but I mean, yeah, just Farcaset and all that. Like, it's just, it's so good.
That's the part of the shit's getting real when that comes out.
Yeah. I don't know what the story is with that. It's a very perplexing choice. But yeah, Mother North, of course. Just fucking top tier Norwegian black metal stuff. Great album. I listened to those first 3 into the ground constantly. At that same time, I was jamming Tristania and playing Final Fantasy VII.
Man, I loved Me Shadow Throne because it's just very atmospheric, easy to process. But that album, they up the level in the chaos. The riffs are just nuts, but they somehow irk out these melody lines that stick with you. That is just, I never get tired of listening to Nemesis Divina. That album, I've listened.
Yeah.
So fucking good. It's their best album. 100% their best album. They never were as good again.
So, for sure. And also, like, I always kind of goofed on black metal dudes for for the corpse paint thing. Like I always thought they looked silly, you know. I never could take them seriously, but like the guys, to me, this era of Satiricon's corpse paint was like actually fucking scary for what it's worth.
Nocturnal Culto on guitar in that one.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's the K guy, Kuldev or Kuldev. That's Culto. Yep.
How about that? All right.
How about that? All right, Alan. Great
All right.
album. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. A really good one. That one's held up incredibly well, too.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. Now, black metal was very, very slow to creep into Western Ohio. I don't necessarily know why, but, you know, like 93 when all the shit was going on, never heard the phrase black metal uttered anywhere. Nothing in the record stores, nothing on college radio, blank, zip, zero, nada. So yeah, it really wasn't, I guess, until probably 95 that a little bit of it started to trickle in. Started hearing a few different, you know, sounding bands pop up on the college radio station. So they were finally getting a couple of promos from some labels. One of the first ones that caught my ear, and so one of the first, you know, black metal things I checked out was this one, Emperors in the Nightside Eclipse. They had played a couple of songs from it on college radio. I had seen it at the record store, so it's like, that looks interesting. It looks different. Yeah, at least I'm looking at it in the store, thinking, okay, this isn't a death metal album, at least. But I wasn't really sure what to make of it, so I didn't buy it. And of course, like, you know, then that weekend they played some of it on college radio. Like, oh, that's interesting. Went back to the store to buy it, and it was gone. Fuck me. So it took a few more months to track down another copy of it, but they got it. I think I may be getting it wrong, but I think the store eventually got it back in stock, and I did pick it up again because I knew the folks there and asked them about it. And so, yeah, like, oh yeah, we can get another one of those. So yeah, this was, you know, one of my earliest forays into black metal. Didn't really even have a name for the style right off the bat. It's just like, okay, these guys definitely look, you know, very different, you know, very different sound with all these layers of keyboards and stuff. But yeah, it was a very, you know, interesting sound. Yeah, it didn't, you know, I didn't like drop all my other metal albums and, you know, go paint my face and become, you know, hardcore black metal right away or anything. Because again, it took a while. There's, you know, I also heard Samael, Ceremony of Opposites, got played around that time. It might be in my stack for later, and a couple of other things. But it was a real slow trickle there around 95 and 96 to kind of, you know, get me up to speed on what was going on with European black metal. So I was late to that game. That style just did not penetrate into the portion of the Midwest where, you know, I was living at the time. But I'd say this was a pretty good way to get introduced into the genre. And yeah, it worked out pretty well.
All right. 92. We just talked about this recently on the album club. Oh, man. I love me this album. This is the best this Sinister ever was. Sorry. It's true. Because they were more thrashy. There's like a lot of thrash riffs on this. Tuned down. And just the songwriting is chaotic. It's super technical. But they figure out how to make memorable songs through it all. I went on and on about it. We talked about it for an hour and a half, so I'm not going to go into it, but this was spinning a lot on cassette in my piece of crap full-size GMC Jimmy. 1992, man. What a year. And it's funny because look at all the stuff I'm listening to here. It's 99.9% death metal. I bought A Blaze in the Northern Sky when it came out in 1992. I hated it. Yep. I wanted Soulside Journey, and I put it on. I'm like, what the hell is this? Is this a demo?
That's the thing. I was aware of black metal when all that stuff was blowing up. Like I was a regular reader of all the mags and everything, and I bought, not as early, I think 94 or 93, whenever De Mysterious came out, I bought it. And I was like, what? This fucking sucks so bad. Like, terrible. And I hadn't heard all of Dark Throne, of a Dark Throne album, but there was that one song on Peaceville Volume 4, that compilation, which I think was Blaze in the Northern Sky. I might be wrong, but there's one track, and I was like, this, what, what? And of course, like at that time, I thought Celtic Frost was okay, but I was like, I don't know. They're kind of bad at their instruments for a metal band, So I didn't really get the whole thing until way freaking later. But yeah, my first couple of experiences hearing black metal as it started coming out were like, okay, I don't get it,
About 6 to 8 months later, a year later, I got it, and I started, like Alan, one of the few times I bought stuff through the Century Media site and actually got my order. It was
Lucky.
De Mysterious Dom Satanis and the Emperor Split with Enslaved, the Hordanis land.
That was another pretty early one for me. Yeah. But Nightside did come first for me.
But Dark Throne did click finally. But man, I wanted Soulside Journey Part 2. I love that record. That's an awesome death metal record to me.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's funny. People did not like that album. For years, I never heard anybody like that. But it seems that Soulside's gotten, a lot more favorable reviews over time. People warmed up to it, or finally just other people did like it. But I heard nothing good about that album back in the day.
Nope.
But yeah, and I had the same reaction to Mayhem that you did, Pat, the first time. I think, again, my girlfriend ended up getting a cassette copy of it. It was just like in a real cheap sale bin. I think it didn't even have like a J card or something. So it was like $1. And it's like, well, that's a metal logo. So she bought it and we played it. And she was just like, what is this? I'm just like, I don't know.
I think those weird Attila vocals, like they grow on you after a while.
Oh, I love them.
I love them now, but it's just like, at the time I was like, what the fuck? And it's weird because he took inspiration from like Skinny Puppy and stuff. And I was well versed in industrial at that point. Like I liked a lot of industrial stuff. It just, it didn't connect for me for whatever reason. Just didn't.
Yeah. Same here. My girlfriend's roommate, Skinny Puppy, was one of her big bands, them and like KMFDM and stuff. Mm-hmm. And all of us are sitting there listening to that Mayhem tape, and we're just looking at all three of us. There's just, none of us knew how to process what the hell we were listening to. So, and
no one thought it was Skinny Puppy. No one thought Skinny Puppy vocals when they're hearing it. It's just like out of context. You take it out of the industrial context, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, true.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Alan. Sorry.
Oh no. I was just throwing that in there.
All right, Pat.
All right. Let's see here. So, speaking of Celtic Frost and stuff along those lines, the band that I liked Celtic Frost okay when I was a young metal kid. I was familiar with the number of covers that had been done of some of their more popular songs. Obituary did Circle of the Tyrants, I want to say, and some other bands. I liked them all right. Some of the stuff didn't quite connect to me. And then somebody was talking about a little band out of New York called Sheer Terror, who were described to me as a hardcore band with Celtic Frost riffs. And I thought that was interesting. And I bought a 2 CD compilation that had most of their stuff on it called Bulldog Edition, which I actually wanted to show. And I tried to pull it. It's not in my CDs, which is really bumming me out. But this is their best record. Just Can't Hate Enough, or a lot of people's favorites. And it is that. It's Celtic Frost riffs with a strong amount of like, I don't know, negative approach, some discharge in there. Paul Bearer, the vocalist, vocal style isn't for everybody. It's almost kind of like, people have described him as sounding constipated. his aggressive,
kind of like crowbar vocals.
Yeah, Crowbar. I don't know if I've ever read anything about it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kurt Weinstein said that Sheer Terror was a big influence on them, because I can hear a lot of parallels. Although Paul can really sing, like that sort of like croony style that was adapted by Life of Agony and some bands after that, out of bands from New York, I think really comes from Paul Bearer. Like he can really sing. He can do like sort of an Elvis-y kind of thing sometimes, and bordering on almost like a almost trad metal kind of style. He's a very talented, varied vocalist and lyricist. His lyrics are some of my favorites. And I mean, this is just a masterpiece. It was recorded at CBGB's, I believe, by Tommy Victor from Prong. And it sounds awesome.
He used to do a lot of soundboard recordings when he was doing sound there.
Yeah, he was a sound guy there, and
Yeah.
he did a lot of recordings at CBGB's as a studio.
Oh,
But
really?
I mean, yeah, I mean, they kind of treated it like a studio sound, and that's why there's a lot of live at CBGB's records that sound awesome because they, despite the fact that the place was an armpit, like it had a really incredible sound system. So this is one of my favorite New York hardcore records, favorite heavy music in general records of all time. One of my favorite bands, you know, super dark, really personal lyrics, like smart lyrics, cool, like Americana kind of references peppered throughout, you know, smoking like a dragon, drowning in my flagon, like all these kind of like, it's like an old sailor guy kind of like turn of phrase, you know. Absolutely love it. So, and that riff style, Alan Blake, the guitarist, kind of pioneered or stole from Celtic Frost, made me want to go back and listen to Celtic Frost more. And Celtic Frost really clicked for me after I really got to appreciate Sheer Terror. And that was around the time I was 21. So
right on. All right. Alan.
Okay. This one had gotten played on college radio for a while. It came out in 94. Could not find it to save my life. So it wasn't actually until spring of 96. So I'd been 21 for a few months by the time I finally ran a copy of this to ground and loved it to death. It is Cemetery's third album, Black Vanity. Now, this, of course, was a huge change in their sound, but I didn't really know that at the time because I wasn't very familiar with Cemetery at the time. Hadn't heard the first two albums prior to this. This was my introduction to the band. And I loved it to death. I would constantly call in to the college metal radio show and make them replay and replay. Be like, play another song from that Cemetery album. They're like, we've played 4 tonight. I'm like, has anybody else called in asking for something? No. Then play me another goddamn Cemetery song. And they would. They were cool about it. But yeah, just nobody had it. So this was another one that I ended up getting while road tripping on a paleontology trip. But it wasn't the Pittsburgh trip from earlier. Once again, Matt, myself, and a couple of other students flew to Phoenix, Arizona for a conference at Arizona State. It was literally called Dino Fest. Cheesy fucking name, but hey, it was the era of Jurassic Park, so even scientists were smart enough to try to cash in on that a little bit. So yes, we got the department, the geology department, to pay for it. Flew us to Dino Fest in Arizona. And so once again, we kind of got there the afternoon before, get to the hotel. Everyone's like, okay, what do we do? Where we go? Matt and I just grabbed the phone book and started looking up record stores. Found one close to where we were at on the edge of campus. Like, we're going here. You guys are welcome to come if you want. All we're going to do is look at records. If you don't want to come, it's cool. Ended up being a huge store that was packed with metal stuff. I blew a big chunk of my trip budget right there when we had barely even put our suitcases down. And this was one of the things they had, and I just about peed my pants with happiness to finally find the damn album. Yes, if you only know this band from like Evil Shade of Grey, this sounds nothing like that whatsoever. This is very, sort of, dark, gothic. You can understand the vocals a lot more. The music's very straightforward, very moody. It's absolutely perfect. Love this album to death. And this ended up being the direction they would stay pretty close to afterwards. Their albums would continue to change a little bit, but the one after this, Sundown, is very similar to this. The one after that starts to get a little more electronic maybe, but it's still very, very good. But yeah, Black Vanity was just one of those key albums I had to have right there in the middle of the 1990s. Kind of cool Dave McKean cover art like that even on it too. It's an album nobody talks about, nobody remembers. Everybody goes all the way back to the debut album, and I like the first 2 Cemetery albums quite a bit too. I kind of, even though they kept changing their sound, I kept liking what they were doing. I just didn't hear those albums until slightly later. But this album... yeah, this was just constantly getting played once I finally found it. Like I said, I'd already had probably most of I think I had like 6 of the 9 tracks dubbed onto TDK tapes off the radio before I ever finally got the CD itself. But yeah, I got a lot of stuff. That may be, the more I'm thinking about it, it may be the same trip where I finally got the Emperor CD. I'm not going to swear to that, but it's quite possible those two came from the same store in Phoenix on that paleo trip. Ended up with a bunch of other stuff, some others that we may or may not get to tonight. But yeah, we found a lot of good heavy metal, and we bored the hell out of every other student who followed us along. They were standing around looking at their watches like, hey, you don't want to be here. There's the door. I am not leaving this fucking place yet. And Matt's just like, I'm with him, man. You guys go where you want. We'll find you later. We did not care. No one put a gun to your head and made you come to this store with us. You knew what you were getting into. If you didn't, you should have. And right there's the exit. We're shopping.
All right. Oh. 1992. God, this EP, mini LP, however you want to swing it. This thing rules. When it comes to the drum machine stuff, Pitch Shifter kind of outdid Godflesh at their own game, and as we talked about Pitch Shifter when we did Album Club on Desensitized, someone said Justin Broderick was pissed off at the band because he thought they were totally ripping him off, which they probably were, but that first, their demo and then the industrial debut for Pitch Shifter was very crusty. They always struck me as like a crust industrial band. But here they got a better production. The songs are a little bit more sussed out. It's just, oh my God, the lead off track Gritter. What an awesome song. But this whole EP just absolutely rules. And he switches between, Adam Clayton switches between pitch shifted vocals and just kind of a yelling style, which would eventually, the pitch shifter would go away as they move forward. In fact, after Desensitized, they started getting very dancey. But I love this EP. This thing is great. And I love this whole style and this whole era. A soft spot in my heart for drum machine type metal type stuff. They're, being younger guy here in Traverse City, Michigan, there was never any drummers. So anything metal I did was drum machine. Alesis HR16B drum machine. And then eventually in Sonic sampling keyboards and whatnot kind of entered. We always wanted to become a lot more industrial with the death metal, but it was just death metal with a drum machine basically. Mm-hmm. But I always looked up to bands like this and bands like Womb, Crawl.
Yep.
Same band, just changed their name.
Optimum Moon Profile.
Optimum Moon Profile. I mean, there was, Godflesh was always definitely in that realm, of course, and there was other bands as well, but Pitch Shifter really stood out among the wreckage for me, especially the demo, the first LP in this. After that, Desensitized I like, but after that, they went right down the shitter for me. But
Skin Chamber was a big one for me.
Oh yeah, Skin Chamber. That was the dudes from Control Bleeding, Paul Lemos and the other guy. And man, I have those on CD. I was listening to them here. I don't know. Last year I was getting big into listening to that stuff again, and it's kind of hard to listen to because they kind of approach it from a non-metal standpoint. It's very repetitive and abrasive.
It's super abrasive. Yeah.
Yeah. They got a little bit more metalized on the second album. They started to kind of get the vibe a little bit, but still they came at it from a really weird.
Yeah. Definitely like industrial guys that were like, okay, well, sonically, I think I understand here. Here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely.
But it's the same way for metal guys that try to do noise and industrial.
Oh yeah. And
they get the gist of it, but they don't get it. They haven't been doing it their whole lives. It isn't the same.
And there's really bad examples of that from that era too. There was like some bad bands, like that band Monster Voodoo Machine. I saw them once. They were not they weren't that great. Certain bands that were kind of fun, like Bile. And I don't know. There was a lot of that metal industrial stuff happening, like when Ministry blew up and all that.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
And I dig that early Ministry a lot.
Oh yeah.
Even like starting at Twitch with Sympathy. Now I kind of like it, but back then I'm like, this sucks. But now I kind of like it. But starting with Twitch and Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste, or Land of Rape and Honey. Mm-hmm. Great. It's great. I saw one of my first concerts was seeing Ministry on the Mind tour, and it blew my mind. They were so great.
Yeah. I wish I would have had the chance to see them back in the day. It just never came together for me, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I was a little too young for like the first couple Lollapaloozas and stuff like that, so just didn't materialize. Somebody mentioned early Fear Factory, which I think is a good example too.
Oh yeah, Soul of a New Machine and Demanufacture, great albums. I love both of those
I like
records.
both of those quite a bit. Yeah,
Yep.
I wish they would have stayed the course with that a little bit longer, but you know. So I think this ties in nicely because it's not really metal industrial. There's industrial elements. As far as scene wise, this band played like the squat scene and ABC No Rio. I think they played CBGBs a lot too. They were kind of the house band for a bunch of stuff going on in New York at the time. Disassociate. I don't know if anybody in chat or if you guys are familiar with or have heard of this band. They were considered like part of the crust scene, but they were really talented. They could play their asses off. If they wanted to play like with relapse bands, I think they did. But if they wanted to play more like in the metal scene, they could have. They put out a lot of like 3 albums between, I don't know, like 97 and 2001 or something like that. But lots of grind, like strong base of grindcore, but with lots of like harsh noise stuff going on in between the songs and a very strong punk ethic. Like the label Devastating Soundworks was Ralphie, the singer's label. He also, but before that, it was called Squatter Rot Records, if that gives you any idea of like what it came from. But yeah, like really well produced, like super tight blasting, lots of weird samples. There's a sample on this where it's just like fucking puking, got diarrhea, like over and over again, like weird, like, you know, like noisy elements of industrial in there. And like occasionally they growled like almost death metal grind kind of vocals. Occasionally they'd lapse into like real punk choruses. There's a dumb song on this called Ice Bong, where the lyrics to the chorus go, ice bong, it's such a nice bong, ice bong, we love to smoke. But it's like an oi song, like the repetitive, like, you know, fist pumping kind of thing with death metal vocals. And it's ridiculous and awesome as it sounds. But yeah, really cool band. They did like 3 full lengths, maybe more, and they're still at it. I saw them in Boston about a year or 2 before I moved with Negative Approach, I Hate God, and Sheer Terror. So that's a terrifying show right there. But yeah, highly recommended. Like super good. If you like grind, like if you like death grind and stuff like that, check it out. It's great.
All right. Alan.
Oh, sorry, just a minute.
Oh, you're all good.
Just yeah, talking to Hattorian folks over here in the chat about some of the Dino Fest exploits. A little bit of gossip from academia. Okay, another big one that was very, very popular with me and friends there at college in the mid-90s was the band Pyogenesis. So I pulled the Waves of Erotasia EP off the shelf. This was just kind of one of those weird bands that we all clicked with for some reason. This EP got a lot of play. The Sweet X-Rated Nothings album, loved that one to death. That was my girlfriend's favorite album. Just, you know, bar none. That was always her. That was the album for her. But yeah, the EP here was kind of cool too. The EP is a little bit less streamlined. It's, you know, leaning maybe a little bit more into that kind of, you know, Peaceful 3 Death Doom sound, a little more laid back, not quite as rocking out as Sweet X-Rated Nothing was. And of course, Pyogenesis very rapidly evolved into, you know, more non-metal directions on subsequent records. I think this was probably another one that, you know, the college radio show introduced us to. It was Metal Storm on station WBGU 88.1 FM on Friday and Saturday nights from like 10 o'clock to 3 a.m., 2 a.m. Something was the cutoff. I might have one of the flyers over there in the back. I'll check here in a minute when I hand off the mic. But yeah, Pyogenesis was pretty typical of, you know, that era, the gruff vocals. They fit in perfectly on those, like, you know, Death is Just the Beginning type compilations and stuff. Very typical of that material. But they were also very catchy. Even at this phase, you could tell they had more pop sensibilities than a lot of the heavier bands did. So in a way, I guess it shouldn't have surprised us when they drifted, you know, into a more mainstream direction. It did surprise us, and it disappointed the hell out of us because, yeah, we couldn't get into that material. But yeah, this was just another key band on our playlists back then. Fun group, emblematic of what we listened to around that time.
All right. Well, I love this band. I love this band, and I remember when this came out, I was a bit disappointed. But Accused Splatter Rock, 1992. It's still a good record. I like it. I just liked Grinning Like an Undertaker a lot. The rap song on there kind of confused me, but I even kind of like that song as well. There was a Nasty Mix. They signed to Nasty Mix Records, and which is a rap label predominantly, I think. And they had the rap guy on from Nasty Mix do like a crossover thing. Anyway, this doesn't have that. Splatter Rock is good. I do like the album. It just isn't as good as all the other albums before it. They broke up after this for a while. They came back with the album Oh Martha, which is one of the best comeback albums ever made.
Rules.
100%. I couldn't believe when I heard it for the first time how amazing it was. They kind of came at it like from the Grinning Like an Undertaker era. Really well produced, really heavy riffs, but they didn't lose the thrill of the old stuff. And yeah, I know they broke up essentially again, or Blaine left the band, and there's Accused AD is happening now, which has a couple ex-Accused members. But say what you will, Tommy is a riff meister. I loved that guy's guitar playing. And it just, you can tell when he's not in the band, you know what I mean? Even the toe tag stuff, I do like that as well, but it just isn't the same without Tommy.
I like it. It's good. And Accused AD is pretty much toe tag. I mean, I mean, Tommy Niemeyer's riffs for sure. Never got into Grunt Truck, so I can't speak on that.
No, not a fan of that. I didn't care for that.
But yeah, I mean, and I like that. I like the Nasty Mix era Accused stuff. Fine.
I like the album before this way better. It's a really great record.
Yeah, was it Straight Razor before that, or was it?
Well, it was Grinning Like an Undertaker, and Straight Razor was a EP.
Okay, yeah. All those three are good to me. I like them being a little bit more like brutal and technical, I guess. But like, yeah, I mean, the first three Accused records are just pure majesty as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, that Omartha comeback record is fucking great. For sure.
And then Blaine leaves again, and Tommy puts out another Accused record with, I think, the bass player from Burning Witch singing.
Yeah.
And man, he sucked. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, musically, it was fine. I got a free copy of it when I was working at Newberry. I got like a promo copy, and I was like, yeah, it's, I can think of worse things to listen to. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, have you heard the hardcore stuff like before Blaine joined the band? Like the Please Excuse.
I've heard Blaine's band when he sang for the Farts up in Seattle there with Duff McKagan.
Yeah, I like the Farts a lot more than the pre-Blaine Accused stuff. The pre-Blaine, it's not bad, but it's just super generic, like US hardcore stuff. It's good. It's good for, I mean, I like generic US hardcore, so I like it. But it's definitely nothing like what came after when he joined, for sure.
Right. So yeah, I had to get the Accused in there. It was, I love that band. I always give them a shot. Forever. Great stuff. Pat.
All right. Big one for me in the late 90s, particularly when I was 21. This is a compilation of all this band's early stuff. I had basically a version of it on CD that I listened to a ton when I was 21. This is Catharsis, who are from this neck of the woods. They're from Greensboro, North Carolina, originally, I think. Light from a Dead Star. This is an early example of people coming from the punk scene with some of those kind of ethics. Hey, all right, super chat.
Hey,
Cheers.
Tip Fam, thanks a bunch, man. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks. But hope you're having a good night at work, man. He's watching from work, I believe.
He's not getting shit done.
Yes, he is. He's hearing all kinds of cool metal stuff.
He's supporting the scene.
Hardcore stuff.
He's great. But Catharsis are a big, like an early example of punk bands, like hardcore bands, kind of adapting metal stuff. Not just music. There's a lot of trem picking all over this, like some early mellow death influence, some Swedish death metal, some Stockholm kind of influence too. And also coming from hardcore, like a strong influence from bands like integrity and Gehenna, you know, like this kind of holy terror-ish kind of stuff that was blowing up at the time.
Holy terror.
They were super political, like anarchist, almost kind of hippy dippy kind of people about a lot of stuff, but their lyrics were awesome. They were super like Old Testament biblical, with all kinds of allegories about, I don't know, capitalism or whatever. And just like really grandiose lyrics about heaven and angels and pulling heaven down to earth and fighting God and all the kinds of shit like that. Really, really cool music. Great lyrics, great band live. They kind of spearheaded the crime think movement, which was a political thing that was going on in the late 90s. But the music on it is just killer, shreddy, like death metal influenced hardcore for the most part, and fast. Like there were slow parts that you could mosh to, but it wasn't like that type of shit that was being written solely for the intent and purpose of people beating the fuck out of each other. You know what I mean? Like they utilized the slow parts of the way a metal band would, as opposed to like, you know, a beat down band or whatever. So great band.
All right. Alan.
As promised. So here we go. This took off one of the bulletin boards my freshman year of college. So we have, Metal Storm WBGU, 88.1 FM. And they did Thursday, Friday, and Saturday back then. I don't think I got to listen to the Thursday night show much because my roommate my freshman year was a dweeb. And, that wasn't going to work so good. But, Friday and Saturday nights, lots of recording songs off of the old Metal Storm show. Let's see. This next one had come out in 94, but I did not pick it up until sometime in 95. I'm guessing I'd heard this band on some compilations and liked what I heard. I don't think this one got play on the Metal Storm show. And it's kind of, I don't think it's one I just picked out as a blind buy. So I'm guessing they were maybe they were on a Death is Just the Beginning type comp, and followed up with the first album I found by them, which was The Fourth Dimension by Hypocrisy.
Very transitional album for that band.
I dig that.
Yes, very transitional, which again, I had no idea at the time. I had not heard the first two at the time. It kind of bugs me that their third album is called The Fourth Dimension. It's like, why didn't you save that title for your fourth album? It's the little things that, will drive you to an early grave.
Maybe they were counting the Inferior Devotees EP as part of
Oh God, if they're counting their albums the way Overkill does, I just can't abide by that. You don't.
We shall not speak of Overkill for a while on this channel, Alan. He who shall not be named.
bit blitzed out there, are you, Marty?
Nah, it's all good.
Nah. But anyway, this was the one I found in a record store in Akron. So this was the one I bought, and it's pretty good. It's not my favorite by the band, but it's not a bad one. It is, of course, alternating because they just, Massey has left the band. Pete's taking on the vocal duties himself. The album kind of alternates back and forth like most Hypocrisy albums do. This one alternates between some very slow, crushingly heavy, doomy kind of songs and, more straightforward, death metal, melodic death metal type songs. The heavy numbers on this thing are unbelievably good. It's the reason that, I keep coming back to this album over time. Apocalypse, Reincarnation, the title track itself, these songs, they really had heavy down, even past the point where most doom bands at the time, just like, that's heavy, but this just feels like a lead brick being put on your soul. And then, the other tracks are good too, but it was always the really slow, really dark stuff that kept bringing me back to this band. They didn't do as much of that moving forward. It was something that was always in their toolbox, but they got, a little more melodic as time went on. They would still kind of oscillate between very, fast biting songs and more melodic ones. But I always really liked, just the very ominous sound they got on some of these tracks from Fourth Dimension. Yeah, again, yes, a lot of folks are going to pick the earlier albums over this. And I think I probably would too. I'd probably have, Osculum Obscenum, ranked higher than Fourth Dimension now, but wasn't listening to that in 95, 96 timeframe. Didn't even know. I couldn't find it. this was what I found, and this is what I liked.
All right. Well, Alan showed one earlier. I'll show the one after it. Fourth Crusade.
Great album.
It's a great album, and you know what? I was actually slightly, I don't want to say disappointed with this record when it came out, but this was kind of like the end complete for me when Obituary followed up Cause of Death, an album I really loved, with another album that tried to be exact same thing as the album before it. This War Master was before this. This sounded like War Master Part 2, and I loved War Master a bit more than this. Over the years, this has come back around to like, oh, I get it now. But at the time, I'm like, it sounds like War Master, but War Master's better. I don't know if that's true. If you put these two albums next to each other, this one might stand up a little bit taller for me now.
I like the production better on that one for sure.
The production's a little more together for sure.
Yep.
But it's really irrelevant when For Victory came out, because that is, wow, their crowning achievement as far as I'm concerned. All the shit's great. They've never put out a bad record, is my opinion. Even with
Mercenary.
Yeah, with the dude from Benediction.
Oh, the Benediction Throw. That was on those ones.
I want to say Dave Vanian, but that's a singer from the Damned.
No,
it's the
on the tip of
Valor Pride album. Dave Ingram.
Dave Ingram.
There
Dave
we go.
Ingram.
Yeah,
that's
a good
even
album.
good.
I like that album.
It's
That's
good.
got a lot of good songs on
He
it.
did a great job.
Yeah,
I would have liked to have heard
Phil
Van
Vane.
Drunen doing this too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the production's kind of dry on Honor Valor Pride, but the opening track has a real funny title, but it's a crusher. Yeah.
Oh wait, it's they're both amazing because they're both thrower, but For Victory for me all day. But I listen to this a lot because I tried to work past the fact that, do I like this better than War Master? I don't think I do, but it's still another bolt thrower record, so it's good. I don't know. I'm a bolt thrower fan from start to finish.
When did they switch drummers? Because they went from
Andy Whale was forever,
Andy Whale
and then
to Kitty,
to
the guy
Kitty.
that passed away.
I think For Victory, it was Andy Whale's last album, I believe.
Okay, all right. Because I know that like Kitty was like technically a better kind of drummer and stuff like that. And
yeah,
I could certainly hear like a deviation post War Master. I don't know. Like I only really listened to the first three for the longest time. And then because I heard a little bit of some of the ones that came after, and I was like, they're not really blasting anymore, are they? It's kind of like one tempo. I don't know how I feel about that. And like eventually I came around and was like, oh yeah, no, they fucking rule. Everything is really good. But I was wondering if like, Kitty coming on like had something to do with them changing up their approach rhythmically or whatever.
Don't know. But yeah, I've been replaying a lot of Bolt Thrower lately. One thing I've noticed about Fourth Crusade, for me, it almost sounds like, at least production-wise, that went back a little bit more towards that really ominous sound they had on Realms of Chaos, which they don't have so much on War Master.
no.
War Master's kind of the more cleaned up sounding album.
Well, they tuned up. They were tuned. They were tuned lower on the first two albums, and then they changed their tuning.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, but Fourth Crusade sounds like they kind of maybe, I don't know if they go back to the same tuning or not, but it definitely has that more murky sound, which suits them pretty well compared to War Master, which it just doesn't have that particular. It doesn't have that real doomy vibe that you get from some of the songs on Realm of Chaos, and that you get again on
World Eater.
World Eater being a great example.
One of the best riffs ever. Oh my!
Oh, so
God.
good. Yeah, the tuning is just hanging on. They're like the intonation's off or something. It just sounds sick and weird. It's so good.
And they have those weird, I don't know if they're pinch harmonic. They have those weird squeal things. They kind of got them from Sacrilege, and they're belongs to that specific strain of band. And I don't know, man. It just fucking rules. Like
we should have had you on the album club when we did the Sacrilege Beyond the Realms of Madness. No, wait.
Yeah,
that was a fun one. It was a fun conversation.
Because they
listen to that album. If you don't hear Bolt Thrower, you're sick in the head, because they ripped off Bolt Thrower big time. They ripped off Sacrilege big time. I meant to say.
They did. Well, they were buddies and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And
I
don't think they shared any members, but I know they touched tips somehow at some point. There's a Venn diagram where they cross. Because I know that like there were members of Sacrilege that were in the Varukers way back, and there might be something that bleeds over there. I don't know. I haven't researched that stuff in a while or thought about it much. And the older
There's not many degrees of separation between them. You're right, Pat.
Yeah, that like that scene that evolved out of like crust punk into death metal in the UK is all like kind of incestuous and small, you know. But yeah, it's all awesome. Fucking rules. Even Necrosanct, Necrosanct and their drummer that
the Necrosanct isn't a couple of those albums. What was it? Incarnate and Desolate are the two I've had.
Yeah.
I'd get rid of them and they keep coming back to me, and it's just they're not great, but they're good. It's good, but not great. I don't know.
I like the vibe. It just there's not really a lot to like latch onto. Like I like the tone, I like the guy's vocals, I like the drum sound, but like it's a mess, you know, which I think is totally enjoyable on its own merit, but you know, that's a whole other discussion.
All right. Pat, you're back. I'm gonna go tinkle. I'll be right back.
All right, let me grab this last CD that's in front of me here. This is a band from Minneapolis. At the time, they were from Minneapolis. This is State of Fear. This is the discography, 94 to 96. I was listening to this when I was 21 in 1999. This is Jay Styles, who's the chief songwriter for a lot of great bands. Eric is in chat. He's familiar with all of them as well. A Crust Lord is Jay Styles. He was in Disrupt, which is to this day, I'm sure, his most well-known band. Currently, he's doing a band called Night Feeder that frickin' rules. Really, really good stuff. He's been playing one of the guys that brought like crust punk to the United States, like in the late 80s, like along with Nausea and the guys and girl from Misery, you know, bringing influences like extreme noise terror and Scandinavian hardcore and stuff like that. Doom, the band Doom, not the genre. Disrupt was like the household name for crust for the longest time throughout the 90s and still to this day because they were on Relapse. This was the band that he did directly after Disrupt. He moved to Minneapolis for a while. Then he moved back to Boston for a bit when I lived there around the time I was 21, actually, and did a band called Chicken Chest and the Bird Boys, which was the one band he did that nobody really talks about. That were more of like a straightforward punk band. They're actually very good. I almost pulled their LP just because I did listen to it a lot when I was 21, but I figured I'd pull this instead. This compared to Disrupt is a lot more straightforward hardcore, a lot more like Scandinavian hardcore influence, all kinds of stuff like, Anti-Cymex, all kinds of shit like that, kind of influencing this a little bit more than like stuff that bordered on grindcore, like Extreme Noise Terror, who are kind of the chief influence on Disrupt. But awesome band, very harsh, straightforward, lots of D-beat kind of rhythmic stuff going on with it. Metallic, like I think death metal fans, especially death metal fans that like Entombed and Swedish death metal, would get something out of this for sure. But this is just their discography. But the one that I spun all the time when I was 21 living in Boston, Mass, was The Tables Will Turn. Jay Styles is a big, vegetarian. It's depicting like a bunch of animals, like tearing apart the corpses of humans and like a post-apocalyptic landscape. It's very of its time, but yeah, I mean, this is awesome, crusty hardcore. Certainly if you like Disrupt, you'll probably like this just as much. Very, very good.
And anybody that's curious about Disrupt, this box set is fucking essential.
Yes. Very good.
All their stuff on it, all the splits, the album, all of it. It's great. Great, great, great. Relapse and Unrest Records put this out.
Cool.
Very cool shit. Great band from the East Coast, Boston. All right, Ellen.
Let's see. This one came out in 95 and got very steady play. It wasn't an album I obsessed over, but it stayed in rotation for a very long time. Might be my favorite album by the band now. It's a hard question to answer. It is Death's Symbolic. Originally got this out of the promo bin at the used record store. They had one of the, I don't know if it even had a cardboard sleeve with it. It may have just been in like one of the, white paper sleeves with like a plastic liner. But yeah, hey, that means it was really cheap. It was a chance to hear the new Death album. So it was like,
Perfect.
yeah, I got $3 for that. That copy is long gone. Kind of wish I still had that. It would be neat these days. So this I picked up much later. But yeah, a very good album that somehow gets a little overlooked in Death's discography sometimes. I know I'm guilty sometimes of forgetting about this one. People talk about, Human a ton and, Andy LaRocque being on, individual thought patterns. And of course, the early albums that people love to death. But yeah, this one for, the later, style, the later portion of Death's career is very, very well put together. It doesn't have, the production issue that came up on Human. It doesn't, go so far out of bounds, as Sound of Perseverance, which some people have trouble relating to. I don't mind Sound of Perseverance, but I know for some people that album was maybe a bridge too far. This one, I think, sits at a really sweet spot where it's very easy to come back to. It fixes the problems of its predecessors. It doesn't have the issues, of the album that came after. So, and it's just a very, very good set of songs on top of that. So, yeah, Death Symbolic. My understanding is this one kind of went a long time without a reprint, and maybe that's why folks, didn't talk about it as much as some of the other ones that were in circulation and a lot easier to pick up. Sorry, what did Logan say here? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people still, you kind of, I guess waiting for the vinyl reprint on this one. But it's a very, very good album in their discography. And even like if you just ask me on a random day, what's your favorite Death album? I probably won't name this one, but if I stopped and thought about it for 30 seconds, I might change my answer and say Symbolic is a great release from 95.
I've still never really listened to that all the way through.
It's good. It's really good. It's a good album. I haven't listened to it. The only Death I've listened to recently is Scream Bloody Gore, but that's just because it's my first jumping in point with that band, and I love it so much.
I just saw Exhumed and Incantation and Ringworm and Ascended Dead and a couple other bands, Morbicon, I think, one or two other bands, big gig in Raleigh, and Incantation closed with covering Evil Dead. And
Nice.
They got everybody from all the bands on stage, like raging along and singing, and it was fun. It was cool. It was cool to see.
Awesome. All right, I am up next. Oh man, this is such a banger album by a killer band that changed a lot. Well, not too much. They got a lot proggier, but Unorthodox, the second album by Edge of Sanity.
Oh.
This is my first purchase, and I bought the tape, which has a different track listing than the CD does. It has a song on it that isn't on the CD, and the CD has a song on it that isn't on the tape, which is just weird. It's just weird. I don't own the vinyl, so I don't know if they rectified it down the road on reissues or what, but I love this album. I love it. It's just such great, underrated kind of Swedish death metal, although back in the day they were kind of the thing. People really dug them. I think but nowadays people don't talk about them as much. I think all of it's getting a reissue on Century Media. So get ready and start saving your money for $50 reissues from Century Media. But this album, what is it about this? It's Swedish. It's got the vibe, but it's more musical. I think it's less punk for me than the Stockholm or the the Gothenburg sound doesn't have. I think the Stockholm sound had a bit of punk to it, but
for
I don't
sure.
know.
Yeah,
This Unorthodox, it's just a great Swedish death metal band. Of course, Dan Swano on vocals. He kind of breaks into the clean singing on the first track, and it kind of gives you a taste of where the band is going to go after that. After that, they start adding more and more and more of that moving forward. I think the pinnacle of that band was, for me, Crimson. I love that record. But, yep, this one really blew me away the first time I heard it. And thank you, Camelot. I got the cassette of it through Camelot Music. The best record store ever. I don't care what anybody says.
I miss Camelot. That was a great chain, man.
It was so great.
Yep.
I feel nostalgic about Media Play sometimes, which
We didn't have one up here.
they really weren't that great, but it's just, just nostalgia.
We had a Sam Goody up here for like 10 minutes, and man, that place sucks so bad. You walk in there, it's like, oh my God, this place, Goody don't got it.
There was one Sam Goody in the mall that was farther out into the suburbs from where I lived, where my friend Matt lived, and when I would hang out with him, I would go there, and I was like, holy shit, because they had Relapse stuff, and at the time, Relapse, it was all like, it was all like Resurrection and stuff like that. It wasn't what it is now, and I was like, oh my God, I only have Righteous Pigs, like I can get all this stuff at the mall, and it wasn't the mall that was closer to me. I could only get like Roadrunner and some earache stuff, so I was like, yeah, shit, this Camelot's sick.
Yeah, they were so good, and they had like I'd get killer records in the bargain bin for $1, sometimes even 88 cents. It's like great metal records, combat stuff, road racer stuff, just crazy. Anyway.
Yeah. Another really good one we had, at least in this corner of the Southeast, was Record Exchange. And they were always really smart.
They had one of those in Kalamazoo. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how widespread they were, but they were definitely a chain. They were pretty smart. They were very often set up close to college campuses. They had a store close to Wake Forest in North Carolina. They had a store next to Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. I think they had 2 next to NC State and Raleigh at one point. So whether you went to north or south of campus, you could run into a Record Exchange. And they always had lots of good used stuff and very cheap used stuff. So they'd buy almost anything the college kids would bring in and sell to them. They wouldn't pay much. But you could bring in a stack of CDs, get $20 or $30, and they'd often sell them for just like maybe $3-5 a piece for used stuff. And so you could find all kinds of really good stuff at Record Exchanges. I got like Sacrifice, Forward Determination, and stuff for like $1 a piece in Record Exchanges, just hitting those different college campuses over the years.
Yeah, Frosty, we had a Tape World and Camelot in the same mall. Tape World was like the size of a walk-in closet in a mobile home, and it was like they had shitty selection, and the tapes were so overpriced.
Somebody mentioned Record Town. We had those. There was several of those in Syracuse. We had Record Town and Record Theater. I don't know what the fuck a Record Theater is. But anyway, like that was confusing because there was in the mall, the Shopping Town Mall, the mall of my youth. There was a Record Town and a Record Theater. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Anyway.
They only had copies of The Wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we had another one called Record Bar in malls down here that was very similar to Camelot. It was not as good as Camelot, but it was comparable. It was kind of like, a slightly worse version of Camelot. So it was always you'd go to Camelot first, then you'd go to Record Bar and double check, to see if they had better prices, but you usually ended up buying more from Camelot than Record Bar.
Camelot had a good long run too in the mall up here. I mean, I remember being a little kid and going in there, my grandma buying me Kiss records. I mean, it'd been around a while, and they were fucking awesome, man. They were so good. Another
big one in the Carolinas for a long time was Peaches Records. They always had a really good selection of all kinds of different styles of music. It was really sad when they went out of
What's
business.
weird about that is I think that must have been like a almost semi-national chain where it was different fruit names, unless they were completely separate, and it was a coincidence that people just wanted to rename or name their record stores after fruit. Because there was Strawberries in Massachusetts, I came to find out. Okay. And I remember there being Peaches down in Florida too. So I don't know if it was like once you cross the Mason-Dixon line, it became Strawberries. I don't know.
I don't know. That's interesting. I'm not sure.
All right. You're up, sir.
So we're back. I decided I was going to pick something else, but since we're talking about Sweden, Wolfpack All Day Hell.
Oh, great band.
Fucking awesome band. Changed their name to Wolf Brigade because there was another band called Wolfpack, or an organization called Wolfpack in their area that were like Nazis. They didn't want to be associated with that. Punk band, crust punk kind of stuff. I was just looking at this. I was like, some of this stuff got produced at Sunlight. Was this one too? I know Dysphere Records were. It didn't say the name of the studio, but then I saw the name of the producer, and it's Mieszko. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that is the sadly no longer with us Mieszko from Nazem. which is interesting. I didn't know that. If that's, I mean, there might be more than one, I guess, but it's probably the same guy. So that's interesting. But Wolfpack were part of this whole movement of crusty punk bands that took that foundation of D-Beat and bands like Anti-Cmex. There's a member of Anti-Cmex in this lineup. This Swedish hardcore kind of thing. They involved a little bit more melody, a little bit Motorhead grit, you know, a little bit of that like motor charged kind of thing. And, you know, slightly elevated production kind of value as opposed to like the really noisy stuff from their forebears. And it kind of building on like the anti-Cmex like full lengths, which were a little bit more fleshed out and less noisy. And noisier stuff like No Security from Sweden and stuff like that. And kind of, this was kind of a precursor to Tragedy and all that Stadium Crust stuff that came right afterwards. I want to say that self-titled Tragedy record came out early 2000 or maybe even late 99. So right before that, Wolfpack and Skit System was going, and it was this kind of more like amped up, revved up, cleaned up, but still just as ferocious, like D-Beat influence crust stuff coming out of Scandinavia before it blew up in the Pacific Northwest like a year or two later. And they were, of course, like all friends and played together and stuff. But like this record rules. It's snarling. I mean, the term like lycanthropunk applies very, very well here. Cool stuff. You got, you know, layout, just bullets. You got bullets. We got lots and lots of bullets. It's
and nuclear clouds.
We got bullet borders. Yeah, awesome record from that time. I have a ton of their stuff, and they just kept getting
the crass text rap and the bullets.
Yeah,
on
you gotta have that. Yeah. And they just kept getting better. I mean, after they changed their name to Wolf Brigade, the last couple of records they've done, the past couple of years have been complete rippers. They just keep adding more stuff, and it feels completely natural. Like there's more. I always sense like a little tinge of like Stockholm. Very good. A little bit of Stockholm kind of death metal, kind of like influences bouncing back and forth, like in a hyper, you know, like in a chamber or something like that. Where like I think a lot of that Swedish hardcore influenced Left Hand Path and all that, and Dismember and all that stuff. And I feel like that kind of heaviness went back to the hardcore bands. And yeah, it just rules. And there's even more of that, and like some new wave of British heavy metal and some like catchy, almost like street punk stuff, like on their later recordings. And it all like seamlessly blends together really, really well. So yeah, very cool. Good stuff. Check it out if you haven't.
All right. Alan.
All right. This one came out right there again, that same time frame of late 95, early 96. And I'm seeing some different release dates looking on different websites. Metal Archive says this came out in September 95, and I don't think that's right. I remember it being colder, so a bit later in the year. Let's see. Prague Archives says October 24th, 95, which I would have thought it was even later than that, more towards winter time, but Western Ohio, we might have had snow on the ground by October 24th, so it's possible. Because I remember, you know, when this was coming out, I actually called the local record store because, yeah, it was, you know, butt ass cold, and I didn't want to walk to the record store if they didn't get it in that day. And they said, no, we didn't get that. But I noticed there were a couple of people that worked there. It was a small store. Jim was the guy you always wanted to talk to. He, you know, basically ran the place. The lady that worked there was nice, but, you know, didn't exactly have her finger on the pulse of things. And it was her that had answered the phone. So talking to, again, Matt later in the day, he's like, oh, you going up there to get the new Sabotage? I'm like, I called and they said they didn't have it, but it was, what's her name? And I thought about it, like, you know, I think I will wander up there and check. And so he's like, I'll go with you. You know, we had like an hour or two to kill in between classes. So we walked up there and it was, biting ass cold. In my memory, there's snow on the ground. October, it was not out of the question to have snow on the ground in that corner of the state. And sure enough, it was sitting right there, you know, with the other new releases, Sabotage, Dead Winter Dead. So, picked it up and made a mental note. Yeah, don't ask that lady what they do or don't have in the store. She's a nice lady, never had any problems with her, but just it was sitting right there and she didn't have a clue. Anyway, for the band, they're very much in their rock opera phase. This one is one of their better story albums. It's set where the Iron Curtain has come down. You've got the Eastern Bloc countries freeing up, and of course, Yugoslavia quickly descends into genocide, which that was a thing that happened in the 90s. Yes, and so this album is kind of the story of that, and there's he's a young boy on one side and she's a lonely girl on the other side, and he's crazy. It's a kind of a Romeo and Juliet thing, except for one house is trying to drive the other house completely to extinction. So more sad. But yeah, pretty good album. It holds up fairly well. It's not their best, but it's certainly not their worst. It's probably most noteworthy because the next to last track is the first time they recorded Christmas Eve Sarajevo, which a couple of years later they would also put onto an album for a little side project they tried out called Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Yep. And now, 30 years later, you have heard that song a million fucking times every single Christmas season since.
And they finally make money.
And they have
that
made
band is so huge. There's two of them. They've made insane amounts of money. John Oliver's worth several $1 million, not off of Sabotage. It's all off of TSO. But yeah, for everybody who's a huge fan and says that's their favorite Christmas song, it was on this in 1995. It was literally just copied and pasted. They already had the song long before TSO was a thing. So yeah, picked it up, enjoyed it, quite a bit. Like I said, it's got some really good songs on it, some very good emotional, some really heart-wrenching lyrics too, because it's talking about a very tough subject here.
Yeah. Awful.
Yeah, and some of some of the quotes, songs like this isn't what we meant, where they're basically praying to God. It's just like when we said we wanted things to be different, this is not what we meant. The quote on the back of the cover is pretty emblematic of it. And every prayer we pray at night has somehow lost its meaning. I think they actually have a quote from Stalin. Yeah, right inside the book. One of the Stalin quotes, hard to read there, but a single death is a tragedy. 1 million deaths is a statistic. Kind of mentality that we're maybe seeing a little bit too much of in today's world as well as in the mid-90s world. So
yep. Never changes.
Some things sadly do not. So yeah, maybe not Sabotage's finest album. I think it is their last really good album. The ones that came after that, this was also their last on Atlantic. The album that came after this was really boring, and the one after that, I revisited it recently and it's better than I remember, but it's still a step down from their last output. So this is kind of a little bit of an end of the era for Sabotage being really in the zone and putting out some quality, rock opera kind of stuff. And wow. I played it a lot that year.
From The Dungeons Are Calling to like my mom's favorite music to listen to at Christmas. What was the other? There was another like heavy Christmas music band, but I can't. I blocked it out. I can't. They were just as big. I can't. I don't know what. It's not important. Who gives a shit?
I'm not sure. But yeah, it is always funny to have everyone's mom and aunt and grandma like, oh, I went to see Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Like, did they play Necrophilia by chance? Probably didn't work that into the set list these days, but
no.
Anyway.
I hate Christmas. God, I hate it. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, Grinch. Show us something you do like then.
Well, this one, there's death metal bands nowadays that might be considered scary, but they're hard to think of. We've all become so desensitized to it, but when this record came out, the way it sounds, the way the whole thing is, this was kind of a scary record for me. Onward to Golgotha by Incantation.
Oh, that's a creepy album, and the cover art is just the rotted cherry on top.
It is. The way this thing is produced is so murky and strange. It goes against death metal sound that was happening in 1992. You could say that it was poorly recorded. It was the way it was mixed. They didn't know what they were doing. I don't care what the the impetus behind it was, but the outcome is this. It's a scary sounding record, and the songs and Craig Pillard's vocal style, it was a lot more blasphemous than what was really going on. You know, you got the B grade horror type lyrics, and it's all tongue in cheek. It's fun. It's whatever. This here is just, it's just creepy, man. It was a creepy record. And Mortal Throne and Nazarene that came out after it, I was a little more acclimated to the sound at that point, so it made sense. But this record here was like, I had to spend a lot of time processing this one, and I finally got into it, but it was a little off-putting at first just because of how sinister and weird it sounds. But once it clicked, I mean, this is the this is the ceremony that launched 1,000 clone bands. I mean, really, let's be honest here. But
well, if you consider that they like had recorded it and didn't like it, you know, like they wanted that sound, like, because there's versions of those songs that are on a lot of different, and they sound really different on other recordings. Like they were going for a specific vibe on that. And I think it's effective. Like I didn't get that record for the longest time. I had a tape. My friend Matt, same guy that I used to hang out with and go to Camelot with, he taped me Baphomet, Dead Shall Inherit on one side and that on the other. Yep. Baphomet was like instantly, you know, gratifying. It's like super moshy, you know, brutal.
I saw them once. They were great. They were fucking great
stuff. Brutal Buffalo death metal. And I was familiar with a few songs from that on, I think there's a song from that on Corporate Death, the compilation. Oh, yeah. But like, I hate to like drive terms like atmosphere into the ground because everybody fucking does. But like,
it's true though.
It's an oppressive, suffocating record. Like it just feels like a weight bearing down on your shoulders. And I think the follow-up is also pretty terrifying too.
Very comparable. Yeah.
And I think they've maintained it well throughout or John has throughout Incantation's career. I think Here and After by Immolation's another good example of like something that's like fucking pretty otherworldly and like scary. Yeah, it's scary. It verges on something that's almost like outsider art. You know, it's not, they're definitely not that. And I think the only other thing I think there's got to be plenty more examples within death metal, but the only thing off the top of my head that's coming to mind that's like really fucking weirdo shit, as far as like straightforward death metal goes, is Nuclear Death. Like that.
I saw them too on the same Nuclear Death and Baphomet on the same bill. It was the first ever Michigan Death Fest. Yeah,
so sick.
That was
so
sick.
Great.
But yep, God, 1992, good shit. Evil shit. Evil death metal.
All right. So
Patrick,
today I got home. I'd been in my Walmart Misfits shirt since yesterday. And I was like, okay.
The socks too? And the Crocs?
No, not the socks.
Dude, you need the trifecta. You need to complete
but the clogs. But the clogs though. Right. Whatever. The Crocs, I mean. But anyway, I was like, all right, I got the live stream in a little bit. I'm going to take a shower. I was like, and I'd already started pulling the records for this. And on the very top of my t-shirt drawer I was like, oh, Phobia. I was like, oh yeah, this was really important to me when I was 21. Me and the guys in my band listened to this incessantly at that time. Means of Existence by Phobia. Grindcore for sure. Excellent grindcore record. Up there with me, for me, it's up there with Extreme Conditions. It's up there with World Downfall, Horrified, all that stuff. You know, a little bit more, again, coming from like the crust punk side of things. Although they had albums on Relapse before. They had the All That Remains 7-inch. And what was the EP? I looked it up earlier and completely forgot because my brain is mush at this point. Return to Desolation, the EP. That was a lot more death metal. That had more slower parts. This came out on a little label called Slapaham. And maybe people in chat that are familiar with like the more punk side of things know about Slapaham. It's goofy. It was run by one of the guys from the band Spaz. It was a lot of that power violence stuff, that like really blast beat driven hardcore that had a lot of moshy, weird, stonery, slow parts. It was very emblematic of that genre at the time. Lots of West Coast stuff. There were bands cropping up on the East Coast that had that sound. Came a little bit later. Bands like Asshole Parade from Florida and Black Army Jacket. But it was in the early 90s, it was almost an exclusively West Coast thing. Phobia was a grind band, dirty, dreadlock grind band that got to be buddies with that scene, it seems like. So this is a lot more like stripped down, strip the fat away, just blasting really short songs, almost going back to the spirit of stuff like Napalm Death Scum, maybe a little bit more like cleaned up in the production and stuff, but great songwriting, a couple of like really, really short, like 5-10-second songs. Great live band. I also like how we mentioned the Crass border. Notice on this, It's the Crass border, but with like scary lettering this time. So, they merging scenes of, hopefully that doesn't cause problems for the stream. There's some gore there, but
is
it's
Bruce in the
gore.
band at that point?
What's that?
Is Bruce in the band at that point?
I do not know.
He did a zine back in the day called Jello Bungrecia, which was,
it's a good name.
Is kind of funny, kind of cool, crossover type of. Anyway, it's not important. Anyway,
I'm curious. I never really looked much into like the band members and stuff like that. I know that the only member left is Shane on vocals, but yeah, nobody named Bruce on this. And the guitarist with the really long dreads was in the band for a really long time, but I don't think he is anymore either. But Phobia had a lot of records. They don't really have any bad records. They're definitely, kept
agreed
along with their sound. They haven't really explored that much, but this is, I think, their most like visceral, like to the point, for the throat. They really stepped it up from that kind of gloominess of the prior records. I like the stuff they did on Relapse too, but this rules. It definitely was like, okay, we're putting out a record on the Power Violence label, so let's do it up for these folks. Great record.
Anybody wants to dive in on Phobia instead of buying all the stuff individually, there's a killer box set. I have the CD box set of it. I could waddle over there and grab it, but go check it out.
Yeah.
It was relatively inexpensive and really good. There's a ton of shit on it.
It's
4 CD box set, I think, or something.
It's called Decades of Blasphemy.
Yeah.
Blasphemy. And it came out on that Polish label, Self-Made God, that I talked about on my recent update. Like tons of.
That's a great label. They put out some cool shit. Yeah.
Yep. Lots of good stuff on there.
All right, Alan.
All right, everybody, get your drink.
How is it? Are we talking about Halloween? Woohoo!
We're switching into some stuff that came out kind of winter '95 and early winter '96, and Halloween's Time of the Oath came out.
That one's for you, Eric Bauer. Beautiful bastard.
It happened. But yes, the same buddy I've been referencing all night, Matt and I were both huge Halloween fans. I remember going over to his house off campus, and he was a big computer tech kind of guy, and so he was accessing the band had put a clip of one of the songs onto their website, which was kind of a new and novel thing. And he was accessing it like on dial-up. It took like 27 minutes to download like a 3-minute clip of one Halloween song that sounded pixelated as shit when we finally got to play the file back. But of course, that did not deter us. The album came out, and we acquired it. And at the time, my take on it was like, it's a pretty good album. I enjoyed it. I did have some issues with it. I was, as you've seen with most of this playlist tonight, was listening to more heavier stuff. Halloween, had some hiccups earlier in the decade. I liked Master of the Rings, the comeback album, and this was the next one. And again, I thought it was pretty good. Had some excellent songs on it, like Power, We Burn, Steel Tormentor,
Wake Up the Mountain.
Yeah, Wake Up the Mountain is a song. It's on
Before the War, isn't that on there? Yeah.
Before the War is on this one.
Yeah, that's a great song.
So I mean,
speed metal song, man.
There are some good songs on it. There are some that miss the mark a bit, and at 12 songs, it's a long album. It was one of these cases again where it's just like, you're just going to cram as much onto this CD as you can because, well, you can. And so it was one of those cases like, there are 6 songs on here that are top notch, and there are 6 songs on here that aren't top notch. So overall, I liked it, but I was starting to, Halloween was past the point where they were making albums that were, God level stuff for me. And all the early Halloween albums are among my favorite stuff ever recorded. This showed that the band was doing well, but they were not going to get. I was starting to get the sense they were not really going to get back to that tier they had been on in the late '80s. But nevertheless, we played the heck out of it. And yes, some of the songs on here would easily make it onto a best of Halloween kind of compilation, no doubt about it. So good album. There was, power metal stuff happening in '96, even though there wasn't a lot of it. But some other bands I felt had definitely surpassed Halloween by this point. We'll talk about one of those next time we come around the horn. But for now, I've handed off to Marty.
All right. Because Frosty mentioned it, it's been sitting in my stack. Asphyx put out 2 releases in 1992. Crush the Cenotaph EP and Last Man on Earth. And I'm a huge The Rack fan. The Rack, to me, is one of the best crushing. That album is so unbelievably heavy. You put that on, the speakers, the speaker cones don't know what to do with all that low-end crunch. It's funny. It whumps the speakers out a little bit. With Crush the Cenotaph, they're still kind of in that vibe. When they get to Last Man on Earth, it's a little bit more. There's some quicker songs on here. They're not as slow and dismal as they were early on, but it's still a good album. Of course, Van Druenen's vocals. That's a voice that launched a million copycats in the death metal, especially the OS, the new wave of old school death metal, OSDM, old school death metal vibe. But yep, I still, even though it wasn't The Rack, I still love this stuff. Just for Martin's sick and powerful, exactly, a powerful voice, absolutely great. And Century Media in 1992, they had a run, man. There was a run of years at Century Media where anything that came out on that label, I'm going to show some more stuff too if we get to it. Dude. It's just like undeniable great. So how did they go from this to whatever the hell they are now? I don't know. Whatever.
They still got a few bands, but yeah.
They do. They still have a few bands for sure. But man, everything that came out, they really tapped into the vein of what was going on in Europe for death metal. Mm-hmm. And I hate to say it, but it was better than what was going on in America to me. I mean, I like the American stuff too, but the American stuff was more brutal, Cannibal Corpse-y stuff. Yep. The European vibe just had a darkness to it. It was just a weird darkness that I loved it. I loved it so much. Doesn't mean I didn't like US death metal. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's just like comparing Creator to Testament. Early Creator to early Testament. Both are great, but Creator is just darker, more nasty and downtrodden. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about Europe, but
yeah,
I don't know, man. The Haunting, it's about ghosts. It's pretty dark,
pretty scary.
Yeah.
All right.
No, you're
I love
exactly
that
right,
song.
Marty. I would agree with that.
Weird.
Yeah. Just a quick thing to interject along because you brought that up, Marty. Both Matt and I felt that way a lot about the same kind of sentiments about death metal when we were there around 95, 96. Matt had never gotten around to taking English 101. It was one of those classes he kept putting off. And so we finally took it, I think that spring of 96. And, for his term paper, he tried to write this mini thesis comparing European death metal to American death metal and explaining why European death metal was better. And his teacher had no fucking idea what the hell to do with the paper. Couldn't understand anything. Got a pretty shitty grade on it. He was pissed off. He's just like, God damn it. She only graded it because she doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm like, well, yeah, you kind of knew that when you chose that as a topic for a 101 English class.
Yep.
But yes, we were thinking the exact same thing you just articulated. Sorry, Pat, didn't mean to cut you off.
No problem. I will say that I feel like a lot of the underrated scenes from the American scene, from the classic golden era of early 90s death metal, like the Chicago scene and the Milwaukee scene.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that was a lot more varied and plenty dark. I mean, obviously all the brutal with 2 O's shit coming out of like, well, like,
wait, what do you mean like Milwaukee? Like accidental suicide?
yeah, and like Mortiscald, you know,
Or
shit like
Morg from
Morg,
Chicago, who
yeah,
are fucking
yeah.
awesome.
Cyanide
You know,
from Chicago. Yeah.
Cyanide, I mean,
Cyanide,
Master, you know, like a lot of that stuff was I feel like kind of treading its own path, and obviously it got kind of got steamrolled by like the Floridian stuff and the New York stuff, you know, Suffocation. I mean, Effigy the Forgotten came out in fucking 91. And it was like, I think it blew a lot of people's minds, mine included, you know, so.
Oh, sure. But there was a Suffocation camp and the Cannibal camp, and a lot of bands filed into those.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. And there was a lot of saturation, you know, and a lot of generic stuff going on. But I feel like, I don't know. I just feel like the Midwest stuff got overlooked. You know, there's a lot of cool, weird stuff. But anyway.
No, that's a good point, Pat. Yeah, there was more interesting stuff happening in smaller scenes. It just wasn't getting as much attention, sadly.
Yeah. So unrelated to anything death metal, Slapshot. How about Slapshot? So again, tapes were going the way of the dodo, at least for the time, out of chain stores. I picked this up on cassette. It was a Tang cassette. I think it was blue. The cassette itself was blue, the shell. I picked this for Metallurgy. I could have picked their first one, Step on It. This is a little bit more metal. It's not crossover, but there's a little bit more fancy guitar work, more soloing, more chugging. Second guitarist on this one. You can see you got the 2 token Hessians in the band right there. Jams, got Jams, long hair, Jams. Then Mark McKay, I used to work with this guy. Nice guy. I don't know what's up with those weird glasses. Fucking sweetheart of a guy though. But anyway, this is I mean, it's Boston hardcore. It was a band that I'd heard about in infamy growing up in a big hardcore scene in upstate New York without really hearing the band. I always heard that like they were like ignorant and they were straight edge, but they weren't vegetarian and all this kind of stuff. And before downloading and streaming, I never really heard them properly until I moved to the city they were from and picked up the cassette. I heard one song on a compilation of music videos called Cinema Birte. The rest of the bands on it were not like Slapshot. They were like bands like No Effects and Rancid and stuff. And it was from a weird record that they did later called Blast Furnace, where they unsuccessfully, in my opinion, tried to involve industrial elements. It was like drill bit noises and stuff with Slapshot. It wasn't great. Didn't work for Slapshot very well, in my humble opinion. This record rules. Choke, the vocalist, is pissed off on this. If you know anything about your hardcore history, at this point during their career, they had a little
because he's not smoking, drinking, or having sex. I'd be pissed off too.
we don't know about the having sex thing. That's kind of like not a real rule. But the deal was that they had a falling out with like the guys in Youth of Today or something like that about being put on a show like lower than another band that was friends with them, and they wrote a beef song. It was like, you know, it was like almost like hip hop or something. The song
right?
The song called Something to Prove, and it has I think not real, but that's been disputed, an answering machine message of like, I want to know why Choke is so negative, and he hates the guys in Bold, the band Bold, so much, and it was like basically an anti-Ray from Youth of Today song. The music itself, like I said, like kind of metallic, but breaching crossover, but not quite there yet, and just mean. Like I mean, just everything. Nothing's pop. Punk's Dead. You're Next is the first song on side B. Song about like, you know, here. Let's take an actual look at the lyrics here. There's an anti-Waddy line on this. You want to worship Waddy? That's not the way to be. You think looks don't matter? Well, we'll just wait and see. You'll end up like the others, all fucked up or dead, taking shit from people or getting kicked in the head. Just clearly like, hey, fuck punk rock kids. Like, you know, not very nice kind of stuff. And it was kind of in stark contrast to all that like positive hardcore that was prevalent at the time. A real like fuck you, you know, which is pretty, you know, for its time, like pretty cool, pretty ballsy. Also, I never noticed this before. I'm pretty sure this is El Duce from the Mentors here in the liner notes.
It looks like him.
I
Yeah.
think he's wearing a sombrero and like a cheetah print vest, and there he is in a Slapshot record. So there's that too. But yeah, I mean, Step on It. The other record is superior, but this is a great album. There's some hockey references. I don't think they have any straight up hockey songs, but there's certainly like Old Time Hardcore is a direct reference to the movie Slapshot, Old Time Hockey. Great movie, by the way. But yeah, I can love Slapshot. This was like something and another funny thing is, yeah, they were a straight edge band, or at least Choke was like, yeah, we're a straight edge band. None of the guys in the band only a few of the other guys are straight edge in the band. There's non-straight edge people, but I write the lyrics. So we're a straight edge band. But I've met more like drunk maniacs that Slapshot's their favorite band than straight edge kids by a country mile for sure.
It's funny, while I was eating dinner tonight, I referenced it in the chat tonight, Pat, that I was watching a little 20-minute documentary on Waddy from The Exploited. He's 67 years old and has had like 5 heart attacks.
Yeah.
He's had like heart attacks on stage.
Yeah.
It's like,
and a lot of those are recent. Like he's had like most of those in the past like decade or so, or last.
He has them and they fix him up and he doesn't miss any shows. He's like has a heart attack and the next day is back on stage. It's weird. It's weird. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of those guys like Lemmy. You know, he's just going to keep doing what he's doing.
67 years old, still doing. Holy shit. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. There was a notorious like Waddy and Jello Biafra beef and a Waddy and Choke from Slapshot beef and all this kind of stuff. It's funny. He was definitely another one of those guys that's just like, fuck you.
Yeah, Scottish, doesn't give a shit about nothing except for punk rock. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right. Ellen.
Yeah. Well, Pat, if he was having a little trouble getting laid, got the soundtrack for him right here.
One thing. Sorry.
I don't think that's real.
I totally forgot to mention this. They cover White Rabbit as last song.
God, why? Them and Sanctuary.
It's everybody else.
I think they knew that it was like, cringe or whatever the kids would say, but like, yeah, they changed the lyrics at the end, like you're gonna end up fucked up or like, whatever, like something judgy. But yeah, they were also known for doing like kind of out of pocket covers, like always. Like when I saw them, I saw them a lot when they reformed when I was living in Boston. They covered Personal Jesus by Depeche Mode. It was pretty awesome. Actually, it was pretty great. So Anyway, I wanted to throw that out there.
White Rabbit and Eleanor Rigby. Well, those are 2 songs that just don't need to be touched ever again. Anyway.
Some metal bands have done White Rabbit justice. Others have not.
Well, I know Realm didn't do Eleanor Rigby any justice. That was
nobody can do Eleanor Rigby justice.
Oh, God, not even the Beatles.
To begin with. Try to cover a bad song by don't get me started on Beatles. I'm full of sour mango beer. Let's not go there.
Not quite full enough. There's like 3 more waiting for you.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long month of Metallurgy streams. Yeah. One per Friday night for 3 more weeks. I bought them. I'm drinking them. Damn it.
That's right.
All right. Next up, this is another band that I'd read about in Sentinel Steel for a long time. Could not get any of their stuff locally. I was rabid to hear them. Matt was rabid to hear them. So eventually, one day we went to the local store. Matt was talking to Jim behind the counter, and Matt was just like, "Can you get a CD by this band?" And Jim looked, through their catalogs and stuff. He's like, "Probably, but it's not going to be easy." Matt was just like, "I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how much it costs, and I don't care what album you get. Just if you can get an album by Blind Guardian, we'll take it." And it did. It took him like probably a good 6 weeks to get a copy tracked down somewhere in Europe, but he did get it. And Matt went right to the store that very day, bought it, and it was this one, Somewhere Far Beyond. So this was his and my introduction to Blind Guardian. Now this had come out in '92. We got this, I want to say it was probably like January, February timeframe, '96. So it had already been out a few years. We didn't know that. We didn't care because it was our first chance to hear this band. And it was exactly what we were hoping it would be. It was Halloween, but better than what Halloween was now doing. This one, of course, once, time went by and we kind of filled in the catalog, we started to figure out this again was kind of a transitional album for them. They were starting to work in a lot more of these bigger symphonic moments where they slowed down and kind of let the song build. It wasn't, just the pure speed metal stuff that they had done on their first few albums.
That's the stuff I like.
Those albums are fantastic, absolutely. But this stuff absolutely checked all the boxes we wanted it to check as well. So loved this album to death. We both played it and played it and played it. He immediately, he got the CD ordered. He immediately made me a cassette copy of it. So yes, we were both playing it just rapidly throughout the winter and into the spring of 1996. At the very end of that semester, I managed to order, and I think it was from Sentinel Steel. He was doing distro by then. I ordered 2 copies of Battalions of Fear, one for me, and I gave the other copy to Matt. I don't think I even charged him for it. It's just like, here, just take it. So that was in our introduction to early Blind Guardian. But yeah, this was exactly what we wanted. So between this and then several months later getting to hear Battalions of Fear, I was sold that, yes, I have found the replacement for Halloween. Halloween's, doing fine. Time of the Oath, I like it, but this I worshipped. Battalions of Fear, love to death to this day. So, yeah, it kind of showed us there was still plenty of good power metal stuff going on, but it just wasn't getting circulated in the States whatsoever. It was a real pain in the ass to get, but it was worth the wait. So yeah, that was a huge part of both my playlist and his playlist for several months there in early 96.
Yes, they were, David.
Gamma Ray was one we had trouble getting to. We were interested in.
All that shit was hard.
It was hard to get. I did find at that it wasn't at the main record store in town. It was the other one, the bigger store that was nice, but didn't carry as much, metal, punk, scene kind of stuff. But one day going through their used bin, they had a used copy of the debut Gamma Ray disc. I will never know how the hell they ended up with that disc in their used bin. So I, of course, immediately bought it. Matt was jealous as hell I found it and he didn't. But, those first couple of Gamma Ray albums, Kai had to work some stuff out of his system. He just did. Yes, there are some good songs on those albums.
Good songs on those albums.
Yeah. There's also some what the fuck are you doing now moment. Yeah. There are some, Kai's living his inner 70s, prog rock child dream fantasy here. Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, he was out of Halloween. He had a chance to try out some different stuff. Why not? That's fine. But yeah, Gamma Ray, I was not sold on Gamma Ray until a little bit later when Land of the Free came out. So, Blind Guardian was definitely going to be, they were the way forward for me and my buddy at that point, for sure.
All right,
Marty, over to you.
Good one, for sure. And this is the episode of the Crass Rap. We'll call it the Crass Rap. But Extreme Conditions Demand Extreme Responses by Brutal Truth, 1992. I was a humongous Nuclear Assault fan, so I heard that Danny moved on to do something a little more extreme. Of course, I'm just going to blind buy this son of a bitch. No ifs, ands, or buts. And yeah, the intro to this album, maybe the best grind intro ever.
Clang.
It's so good. Such a great riff. And this is definitely grindcore, but a lot meaner than, say, Terrorizer. I think Terrorizer has a great punk vibe. This here just has a bit more death metal-y vibe to me. I don't know, but yeah, I still dig this record a lot, and I was blown away when I heard this thing. Did it make me want to say fuck Nuclear Assault? Not really. But isn't it funny? Brutal Truth, as much as this band has toured the world over all the years and done what they've done, I rarely see anybody ever talk about Brutal Truth on the VC. Have you seen anybody ever mention Brutal Truth? Really?
Just me. I mean, I know you have, and like,
well, yeah, but
like our tight buds have over the years, but
sure, but
just like
weird.
Randomly, I don't see them get discussed that much, and it's weird because like That record was huge when it came out. It was a huge deal with like death metal people. And then they did Need to Control. I don't really feel like as much people were as into that one.
That's a great record too,
which is a great record. Oh, absolutely.
They got a little bit more crazy and weird on that one when they continued to do so.
But then when they did Sounds of the Animal Kingdom, the death metal scene was getting weird and kind of not dissolving, but it was splintering. You know, people were getting more into like black metal on one side of things, and then people were super into the real like the brutal death metal as it was developing. People are getting into pessimist and shit like that. Sounds of the Animal Kingdom, I never really appreciated until much later. It's a great record. It's super weird.
Yeah.
But they were like playing with like bands like Coalesce and like these noisy hardcore bands that were, I mean, Coalesce didn't have blast beats or anything like that. They did a split with Napalm Death too, but like these, and Dillinger Escape Plant, you know, all this like kind of pushing the envelope wild guy shit. Like they had like a certain jazziness to them after a certain point that I think was really interesting. Like they kept evolving is my point.
Well, they do shows with the boredoms and shit too, which is like it kind of rubbed off on them big time, I think.
Yeah, they were always kind of treading their own path like the entire time, which is really fucking cool. Like,
yeah,
and you know, really cool bunch of guys too, from what I can tell.
Oh yeah, totally. 100%.
So, yeah, awesome record though. Fucking love it. It's been a big one for me for a very long time.
Hell yeah! All right, Pat.
I just have one more left, but I can always pull more.
Oh, dude, I've got so much shit left.
I
what
pulled
time
15,
is it? Holy crap!
I can always run around my record room here. You can see me in my background like a little goblin.
We'll put the Wackety Sax song from Benny Hill up there. Speed up the video.
This is another crust band. This is Hell Crusher. This is Doomsday Hour. I think this Riot Cop or a soldier with a gas mask thing has been used in kind of like the carnivore guys, you know, in Retaliation. Like I think it's been
it's like a new aesthetic, isn't it?
It's just been on but the specific photo I think has made it onto a bunch of stuff. Anyways, so Hell Crusher were a band that came out of Hell Bastard and Energetic Crusher. They took members from both and just took the names and squished them together.
It's funny.
The first Hell Crusher record is kind of more like metal. Like it's like almost like, I don't know. It's like, it's very crust, but it's also got a certain thrash metal element to it. Kind of like, some like Sacrilege, you know, it's that sort of like that Hell Bastard record on Earache. Then they kind of went back more to the roots and went more to like a straightforward, not pure D beat kind of thing, but a lot more dischargey, straightforward kind of, Hell Bastard was before Hell Crusher. Yep. It was members of Hell Bastard and Energetic Crusher when that left both of those bands and started Hell Crusher. Anyways, this record is like, it's almost like a little bit more mature, developed version of that band Doom from the UK. There's a little bit more parts going on. There's some like little short solos and stuff like that. A few
Doom are awesome, by the way.
Oh yeah. A few gloomy like Amoebics moments kind of here and there, you know, very comparable to stuff like Extinction of Mankind, which was another band that was around at the time. Just really good, you know, crusty hardcore stuff. I saw them when I was in the UK the first time at a Punk's Picnic in Nottingham. I saw them with Cress, who are also awesome. Another band.
You sent me a Cress record. It was a great record.
Yeah. Yeah. Cress, cool, gloomy, like mix of like Crass and Amoebics, but somehow that works. Like really, really good scene that they had going like in Bradford, England, that Bradford Leeds area. There was that Flat Earth Records was a label that was going on at the time. The 1 in 12 Center, which was a completely volunteer run, DIY, run by punks kind of space that had like 3 floors. Bottom floor was the venue with a bar. Second floor was a cafe with a bar. Third floor was like pool tables with a bar. And like dirt cheap, like Samuel Smith's beer. Everybody was really nice. Great place to visit. I recommend it. It's still going. But yeah, awesome band. Great band. Hell Crusher. I think they got back together and did a record not that long ago, maybe less than 10 years ago. That's also pretty good. But a band that's overall solid crust punk band. Nice and heavy.
All righty then. Alan. You're muted, sir.
There we go. Thank you.
Goddamn rookie mistakes. What's going on in here?
It's a real-
It's all that fruity tooty beer you're drinking.
That was having to check text and messages and didn't want all the beeps and bloops going
Oh,
off.
that's all good. I'm just kidding.
It's all good. But yeah, so getting into spring 96, I've been 21 for about 6 months. And one of the very last albums I would buy before moving out of Ohio, which ended up being a big change in my listening habits, we'll get to on the last few rounds we do tonight. But I picked this up as I was essentially for graduating in geology, you had to go do like a big 6-week like mapping project out west. Because, spoiler alert, Ohio is flat as fuck in the West.
Yeah.
There's not much of anything to see or to map.
Nope.
You know, they hauled everybody out to like, Colorado and New Mexico for 6 weeks where you were camping all the time and, mapping and seeing all these famous rock formations and stuff. This meant we needed some new music to, throw in Matt's car, because he was driving following the vans, and God bless him for doing it, because being stuck in those vans for 6 weeks with some of those folks would have been miserable, but we avoided that fate. So yeah, one of the last things I picked up in Ohio was the new Amorphous album at the time, which was this one. Tales from the Thousand Lakes had, blown up pretty big for the band and made quite a splash. And then they came out with Elegy. And this saw the band, really follow up on, those more proggy 70s influences. Obviously a big change in vocal style, going with, a lot more clean vocals, getting rid of the, death vocals. It was kind of a risky play for the band, apparently, in interviews, they've said that, the label didn't know how it was going to go. The band didn't know how it was going to go. It obviously worked out very, very well for them.
They picked a good singer.
They had a good singer.
Yeah.
They had a good, they had a good theme, kind of
Good
tapping
vibe
into all this, older, Scandinavian poetry and tales and stuff. And yeah, they just kind of, I think, too, Matt and I weren't the only people on earth that were a little sick of death metal by 96. So the fact, that they were kind of one of the first ones off that boat and finding a new direction to go off into worked wonders for them. They were a little bit ahead of the pack on some of that. So yeah, we played the crap out of this album as we drove across the country and, did our geology stuff for 6 weeks and such. But a great album. Fun trivia one on this. This, of course, is where they changed logos, which Marty and I will do the changing logo shows. That's
never a good sign. Never a good sign.
We're going to do that as a topic in the near future. That's going to be a fun one.
Change logo.
This one, obviously nothing very fancy about it. It's just essentially lowercase letters, a very basic font.
Stupid.
It was never supposed to happen. It was put on here just as a mock-up, and nobody ever changed it. It was literally, they had the cover and they're just kind of like, well, we're just want to kind of see how the band name's going to look on it. So just typed it and slapped it on there. The band's like, yeah, everything looks like the cover. It looks good. It was literally just kind of went off to the printers with that still on it. It wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to have they probably were going to use a new word logo or maybe clean up the old logo a bit. But it was not supposed to become the font they would use for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
It came out just like, oops, guess we forgot to make the final edits to that font before, well, shit, too late now. And that is how Amorphous ended up with one of the least interesting fonts of all time.
Their death metal logo on there would have been a misrepresentation of what that
Yes,
album
I don't
is,
think they were going to go with that at all. But they weren't going to go with that either.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't go back and play Elegy a ton these days. It is one of those albums I heard so much during that 6-week period that we knew it pretty well by the time we got back to Ohio. But it is a very good album. After that, I completely lost touch with Amorphous. Not because I disliked the album, but as I'll discuss over the next couple of rounds, listening habits were about to change quite a bit. But that's for my next round.
Hey, Thomas, how you doing? Good to see you.
Hey. Yep. Good call, Thomas. Absolutely.
Well, it's funny. I went through. I typically do a dive. I do like death metal albums that came out in 1992, and then heavy metal albums that came out in 90. I did the thrash metal albums that came out in 1992. There's a list, tons of thrash metal records that come out, and I hadn't listened to any of them. I haven't heard of half of them, and I'm just like, my brain had switched so far away from thrash. I was so burnt out on thrash metal. I was into the death metal thing. The only album that popped up on there that I remember buying when it came out and spinning a bunch was Sadist, A Vision of Misery. Which is a follow-up to their Swallowed in Black record. This is a great record, but man, I get it. Maturity, evolution. This is the natural progression of where Sadist should go, I suppose, with the caliber of musicians that are in this band. But man, Certain Death era, Chemical Exposure,
Death to Posers,
Swallowed in Black, Death to Posers demo. This shit is a long ways away from that. It just is. It's still great. It's really good. It's a little bit more techy. I still really like this, and I like the album after Elements of Anger after it as well. I like Sadist. I just do, straight up. I liked all their records. Their comeback record is quite good, even without Steve DiGiorgio.
Yep. I liked it.
They're trying to be old school again. I listen to this a lot, but they're starting to pick up on deathisms here and there. At this point, Steve DiGiorgio had been in Death for a minute. So that kind of rubs off on the technicality of this a bit, I think. But I liked it a lot, but it's funny. I'm the only other thrash on there, Death Row's Life Beyond, which I didn't have back then because that was impossible to find. There was no, I have a King Folly bootleg CD of that. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. Anyway,
you have a King Folly original CD.
A King Folly acquired CD of that. Yeah. But I have a version of it that isn't legit. We'll say that. And
you have a copy of it that you got from King Folly.
Exactly. That's what I meant to say. That's it. Exactly what I meant to say.
That is what you said.
Yeah,
so
totally.
The intern will edit that out here in a few minutes.
And everybody, the new Deceased is coming out. I've been kind of picking away at the promo a little bit. It's pretty freaking awesome from what I've heard so far. So
I think it's August 30th. I'm
disappointed by anything they've done. There's a few records I'm like, it's could have been better. But what was the last one they did? Ghastly White, or have they done something since then?
No, that was it. Ghastly White. They did a covers album.
They've done a lot of those, and I enjoy them. I love their hardcore covers, like their cover of The Eliminator by Agnostic Front. It's fucking awesome.
Yep. We got to get old King back on here again soon, and I would imagine he's going to want to do it again anyway. We should probably get someone on the staff to review the new Deceased too. If I don't do it,
I'm sure someone will want to do it. Maybe we can get King on something like late summer or closer to the release date. Let him help hype it up a little bit.
That'd be great. But yep, Sadist, check it out. It's a great record. Is it Chemical Exposure, Illusions? No, it's not. It's not. But what are you going to do, Patrick?
All right, so just did a quick little sweep. Maybe you saw me in the background there.
Grab just a few more rounds. It is getting close to a probably wrap-up point.
I could go for another hour, but we don't need to. I
didn't want to go too heavy on the hardcore and the crust, although crust is so adjacent to metal, like a lot of it's actually metal. But I was thinking about that period because, like I said, I was living in Boston, going to the Palladium all the time. Trying to think of like records that I was into from bands that I saw, because a lot of those bands that I would go see, like Dying Fetus and stuff like that, loved them live, never bothered picking up a record, However, Skinless, I listened to this a lot. I saw this band a lot. They played the Palladium pretty frequently. I think this had just come out. This is Progression Towards Evil. This came out originally on Relapse, if I'm remembering right. Early, definite, like just numbskull, brutal death metal stuff, lots of slamming elements, does not take itself too seriously. There's a song on it called like Tampon Lollipop, like that kind of thing. Great live band. They were from Troy. I should be more specific there. They're from Troy, New York. They came out of this kind of like, I gotta say the Troycore scene is a very good example of hardcore and metal like meshing together almost completely seamlessly in a lot of places where it didn't happen that way. It was a kind of a lot more of the like New York hardcore, like tougher side of hardcore, bands like Stigmata and stuff like that. I really grew an appreciation for that scene a little bit later on in a lot of those bands. But Skinless was a pure death metal band that just happened to play those shows a lot. And Sherwood, their singer, was a pretty wild dude live, like pretty great frontman. And this record, I mean, it's silly. It's you know, kind of gross.
Yeah.
You know, it's death metal from that era, you know, like, you know, shock value stuff going on very much of the time, but I still enjoy it. I hadn't heard it in freaking ages, and I was going on a little bit of like a early brutal death metal deep dive, so I picked it up. It got reissued on Corpse Gristle Records, and yeah, I enjoy it. It's this and like Internal Bleeding, like closest I get to like getting into stuff like and Malignancy and some other stuff like that early brutal stuff. Closest I'll get to like enjoying Slam or something like that. But this is a fun nostalgic record for me. Scratch the Surface.
Awesome.
Scratch the Surface is a great record. Love that Sick of It All record. First 3 Sick of It Alls are awesome.
All right, Alan.
All right. So I get back from the Western U.S. and graduate there in the summer and head to West Texas. So change of scene. While all that's going on, I did a real simple tape trade with some dude in California. I have no idea who it was. We traded one 90-minute cassette tape each. I have no idea how the trade came about. I wasn't quite into tape trading just yet. I'm guessing we crossed paths on some very early internet forum. That's the only thing I can think of. I have no idea how else we would have crossed paths at all. Anyway, he had never really heard new wave of British heavy metal and wanted to check that out. And so I offered to fill a tape with new wave of British heavy metal songs for him. And in exchange, he offered to fill a tape with black metal stuff out of Scandinavia for me. As I've mentioned, this stuff had not really trickled into Western Ohio at all. I'd gotten a little bit of stuff with Emperor, you know, Samael, but
Thanks to
not
Century
much.
Media.
Well, and even there it was just, you know, very, very little. So he ended up sending me a tape, you know, with 3 bands featured on it. There's some early stuff from Ancient. This is pre-Kenyan Chronicle material.
Svartalfheim rules. I love that record.
Yeah, I liked the songs. I couldn't find any album by them. It had some Burzum songs on it, and I think it was a mix of songs from like the first 3 Burzum albums. Yeah, again, I know it had some stuff from Hivit Lysit Taras on it, but I'm pretty sure it had stuff from the first 2 also. And then it also had a few songs by this band playing much, much faster than the other 2. And that was the first of the 3 I really latched onto and could find a CD by. And so I ended up getting Immortals Pure Holocaust.
Such a great record.
And I guess I probably special ordered this from a place that was out of Baltimore that had decent import CDs. They were a little pricey, but they at least carried the stuff. And it's the only... I was trying to think, where the hell did I get this? I didn't get it from a store in Ohio. They didn't have it, couldn't get it. And I sure as hell didn't get it in Texas. So I didn't get it through Sentinel Steel. He didn't carry this kind of stuff back then. So I must have ordered it from a place in Baltimore that I used to get a few random things from. I don't remember what the name of the distro was. But anyway, yeah, so this is the point, then transition out of Ohio to Texas, where I started getting more and more into black metal, because I also started poking around online more with some, you know, like really early, where people would just, you know, post their trade lists on like simple little GeoCities sites and things. And so you would just email and be like, oh, hey, I saw your, you know, trade list. Here's my trade list. And you'd work out, you know, these, you know, ridiculous, you know, trades of like, you know, 8 TDKs worth of stuff back and forth. That's how I started spending more and more time once I got to Texas in the middle of 96. But yeah, Pure Holocaust kind of got picked up there in the transition. And this was one of the albums that made me think, I definitely want to start paying more attention to this black metal thing. I liked the Burzum tracks too, just took longer to find something by them. I liked Ancient. I found the Canyon Chronicle pretty early.
The Canyon
Which was
Chronicle
okay. It was
isn't
okay.
a bad record. It really
It's
isn't.
not. It's not. You have to yuck it up a little bit because
Yeah.
of the vampire.
It's
thing.
cheesy.
But it's not a terrible record.
No.
It got a good amount of plays from me back in
Dan
the day.
Swano produced that record.
Oh, I forgot that. I don't know if I know that, but if I did, I forgot it. But so yeah, basically all three of those bands I followed up on and got stuff, and that started leading me down the black metal rabbit hole. Because when I got to West Texas, it turned out the local record stores didn't carry any new heavy metal hardly at all. And so I went from a place where I could at least find a few things, here and there, to just like, they're like, we don't cut into that kind of thing around here, boy. It was unbeknownst to me, I had ended up moving to a dry county, couldn't buy beer, liquor, any kind of alcohol outside of a bar, gas station. My roommate and I, first night there in Texas, we go to the 7-Eleven to buy a thing of beer. The guy looks at us like, you guys got to go outside the county limits. You want that? We're just like, oh, what the fuck have we done to ourselves? So yeah, basically, the stores weren't carrying any new metal. This is why I started falling off of these like Century Media bands. Amorphous, forget it. You could not get that stuff in West Texas. The stores weren't even going to try to special order it. So it became tape trading and I went more into the black metal underground, and there was one saving grace, but we'll get to that on my last round here in a minute or two. But yeah, Immortal, Pure Holocaust. That was another big gateway, opening up black metal to me around summer '96.
The only ancient that I owned was Mad Grandiose Blood Fiends.
That's terrible, dude.
That might have been the worst thing I've ever heard.
It's fucking terrible. The album cover, everything, it sucks. It's bad. It's a bad record.
I didn't know. Like, I was just buying random shit. Like, this is
Yeah.
like a few years before me catching Satyricon live and stuff. And I was just like, oh, I like these the first couple of Cradle of Filth records. I was like, this is cool. I had like Anthems to Welkin at Dust and like the stuff that guy taped me. And I was like, ancient. It was like used. I was like, for a reason. And I was just like, oh, okay. Oh my God. This is so fucking bad. Holy shit.
Yeah, that Lord Caiaphas guy was in Grand Belial's Key in the demo era of that band.
Yeah. I've read GBK interviews for some reason where they're like using colorful language to disparage him. I'm like, oh, all right.
Yeah. Then he also did a side project or a solo project called Thok, at Thokk.
Okay.
Which is decent. It's kind of in the same vein as that era of Ancient he was in. But no, the Ancient Svartalfheim, the first full length is really good. Good old school Norwegian black metal, and then the Trolltar EP is really good too. That band was like poised for greatness, man. Their Eerily Howling Winds demo sold like shit tons of copies.
So I was always confused. Like, they were Norwegian.
Yeah.
When did that guy live in the US and end up in GBK? Like, how did that happen?
Well, the guy from GBK went to I don't know how that worked. I interviewed him back in the day for Worm Gear. I don't know if he moved to America or what, but that Caiaphas guy ended up getting involved. I don't know if he moved over there or the guy moved over here. I have no idea.
Yeah. I was always just like confused by the chronology of it, but like, who cares?
I don't know it either, but yeah, one of them ended up like in the Northern Virginia Nova area, and that's about the time that like the comments are starting to register here that Kim Goss kind of started getting involved with Ancient.
She was in what band? Avernus? What band was she in Chicago? She was in a Chicago band, ripped off some people, moved overseas, got hooked up with Ancient, and then she started her own power metal band called Synergy. You remember that?
I had blocked that.
Yeah,
Thank
Synergy,
you.
a symphonic shit power metal band.
What's the Avernus she was involved with?
I don't know if it was Avernus. It was some band here in the U.S. She was from Chicago area.
Yes. Shitty shit.
She married Alexi, the guy from Children of Bodom. She married Liho. Yeah, Alexi Liho for a while.
I didn't know that.
She kind of was one of those gals that worked her tendrils into all these different bands. She was kind of like a scene queen, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, Synergy fucking sucked, dude. It was. I mean, I like cheesy power metal, but not back then. I didn't. It was bad. Yep, it was Avernus. Okay, cool.
I'm looking at the Avernus page.
Wow,
now.
my brain is still working. Woohoo! Everything else sucks, but my brain still works. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
For useless knowledge.
Avernus. She was with Avernus from 94 to 95.
She had to get out of the scene because she ripped off somebody or something. I don't know. So she moved. She got into other bands overseas, but yeah. But anyway, yep. Who just went?
That was my long-winded diatribe about Immortal.
Right on. Okay, well, since we're winding down, I'm going to finish up my Century Media run here because it was very important to me. The Century Media bands were huge in my brain. Now, I've shown this every week for months now. Blood Ritual by Sam Mayle. Probably it's either this or Ceremony of Opposites are my favorite. They alternate. Super Evil. This could be black metal. It really could be. It's just it sounds more evil than a lot of the black metal bands did to me. It just, the baby crying on the one song, it sounds like they're recorded in a dungeon, like moisture dripping from the ceiling type shit. Awesome. Yeah. And then, of course, Shadows in the Deep was 1992 as well by Unleashed. When they got to Across the Open Sea, the stuff started to get a little too simpleton for me, but the first two Unleashed records are really, really good. I still like Across the Open Sea, but it is a little too knuckle dragging for me.
It's the last one. I heard the fourth one and I was like, what happened? Like, I don't know. It's weird, kind of chuggy, kind of bouncy kind of stuff going on.
Johnny changed his voice to more of a hardcore shouting style, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that for shit. And I like hardcore, but
I do, but
sound right.
Most of the time when death metal dudes try to do it, I'm like, God, just don't, please.
They got back on track. I mean, I think Hammer Battalion was like a good album that come back that was really good. I'm like, wow, I actually care about Unleashed again. This is cool, but
I'll have to check out that later because those first three are great. Because it's like, if you look at the big four of Swedish death metal, right? Like Entombed, Dismember, Grave have a more gloomy, slower thing going on. And Unleashed are like you said, like the knuckle dragging, like the Venom guys, the Venom Motorhead kind of contingent of it. So I love those first three records are fucking awesome.
So good. All right, Patrick, what you got?
All right. So to wrap things up with me, another crust record, but here's the thing. This is an American band called Logical Nonsense.
They're awesome. That's a great record.
Yeah. This came out on Alternative Tentacles in 1997. I listened to both. This band had a split with Grimple and 2 full lengths. This is Expand the Hive and Soul Pollution was the name of the other full length. Everything they did was great. This record's awesome. And there was a certain thing with bands like this. Again, we're talking about Southwest out to the West Coast. This is very like graffiti looking. Like there was a weird kind of crossover between like train hoppers and crusties and people that were into like tagger culture and stuff like that out west, and this is kind of emblematic of that. The sound is really cool because it's definitely got that fast raging crusty thing going on. It's got a good metallic level of musicianship, but they've got gloomy, slow, almost sludgy parts that harken to like not like later not like relapse era Neurosis stuff that gets like really expansive, but like maybe like Word is Law. Neurosis and like the first album, Pain of Mind, like you can hear the heavy influence those first 2 Neurosis records have on a lot of American bands from the crust scene. So it's got this really almost kind of trippy vibe to it. The bass sound is really, it's distorted, and I mean maybe I'm not a musician, so I can never say exactly what the hell it is, but it's like maybe a flange or something on the bass. It's really weird sounding. I feel like they're kind of like a faster, more to the throat version of Dystopia, if anybody's familiar with Dystopia out there. But like, yeah, like weirdly trippy, like drugged out, but still like fast raging crust punk stuff. In a lot of ways, like there's a few elements of their sound that almost kind of remind me of Sepultura a little bit in some weird kind of way. And I can't quite put my finger on like Chaos AD era, maybe Arise era, but that's it. Like a more basic punk kind of version of that mixed with Neurosis or something. But yeah, really cool record. Great band. Mm-hmm. I forget about them for a long time, and then I go back and listen to them, and like they always hold up. Really good.
I'm not really super well versed on Alternative Tentacles releases, but
Weird
that
label.
always kind of struck me as a weird Alternative Tentacles release.
I mean, Jello, you got to hand it to Jello, like with the stuff that he releases. Like he keeps his finger on the pulse of like whatever's going on in music. He seems like he's pretty picky, but like he does do the occasional metallic thing, and he certainly never like just stuck to like straightforward punk, because by the mid 80s he was putting out like or maybe a little bit later he was putting out No Means No records and shit, and like Steel Pole Bathtub,
who are fucking awesome.
That stuff's getting reissued, awesome. Or it's already been reissued, I think. Actually, wrong's been reissued, but yeah, I mean, the dude's definitely got a taste unto himself and knows what he likes, so that's cool. He was the first person to put out a Brujeria record way before they got to the like way before they were on Roadrunner. Like he put out and that record, it was a 7-inch, and it's fucking brutal. Like the early Brujeria stuff is before they got too jokey, is really like scary, gore covers and everything. And he put out, I think, their first 7-inch, is it Macheteza? It's a Spanish word, so I don't want to embarrass myself. But
Machetezo, or
yeah. So yeah.
Hey, Jack, welcome and happy birthday, man. Is this your first time posting in here? If it is, I don't recognize your name. Cheers. Happy birthday.
But if he's digging into first wave of Swedish heavy metal at age 21 and 22, he's getting into some very cool stuff and getting pretty deep into the weeds already. That's awesome.
And you must hate money, because if you want to buy any of that shit originally, you might as well just fucking chop off your
There's lots of good anthologies and reissues coming out, though. You can get a lot of it without spending as much as you used to have to.
A lot of those splattered reissues are nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep, those are good.
All right, Alan.
Okay, so to wrap it up here with a few things very quick. So yeah, I'm stuck in West Texas, middle of 96. I've been 21, kind of getting to the end of that. Going to turn 22 later there. Black metal, I'm getting interested in, but having to find it by tape trading or the occasional special order through weird channels. The big album that I got there in fall of 96 was Storm of the Lightsbane by Dissection.
Yes.
I can't remember if I got
that album is so fucking good.
So good. The band had been featured on Nothing But Death Remains Volume 3. It was a 2 CD compilation, and there was a demo version of the lead track, Night's Blood, on there. It was my favorite track on that comp. So really was, looking forward to checking this out. And yeah, it's fantastic. I cannot remember which distro I ordered it from. It may have been that same place in Baltimore. I want to say it was from Sentinel Steel, but he really didn't carry much of this kind of stuff. If he had this, it was a lucky break for me, because I wanted it very badly, but want to find it locally. Interestingly, fun fact for those dissection completists, the demo version from the compilation is not the same take as this. It is different. It's a little slower, especially in the bridge. And I like it a little bit better because, when they're doing the everlasting malice for the wicked soul can't resist the night's sweet blood part, it's a little slower on the demo, and it packs a little more punch when it hits you. This version, it's going slightly faster, and so it kind of goes by a little quicker. It doesn't have quite the same resonance to it. But I was doing that kind of stuff for black metal. What I did find, though, when I got to West Texas, all was not lost. While the local stores weren't carrying any kind of new releases, forget Century Media, Relapse, none of that stuff was available. But there apparently had been a good local metal scene in the 80s. And these stores had all these old used CDs and cassettes and LPs where people had eventually, of course, gotten 18 and grown out of their metal phase and dumped their metal collections. So I started being able to pick up tons of this 80s stuff, which, I'd heard some of here and there, gotten some of, but it was, finally, it was a bonanza of every 80s thing you wanted to hear. And of course, it was all dirt cheap. There were used cassette tapes. They're like $1 to $3 a piece. Vinyl at the time was completely dead. So even a lot of the rarer vinyl you could get for 10, maybe $20 at most, and that would be for like a really rare. There's like a Merciful Fate picture disc, might have been $20. And some of the guys working at the stores, they had been metal fans back then, so they knew that kind of stuff. They had no interest in new stuff, hadn't kept up with it, but yeah, you could tell I was the first person that had come in there in ages that was even looking at this stuff, because I was having to wipe the dust off the sleeves and stuff. But so yeah, this is where I started working backwards and got to hear like Running Wild for the first time on a used $3 tape.
Fucking. If anybody in the chat doesn't like Running Wild, you are insane.
And the
So
album I
good.
heard was Port Roy. This was just the one they had laying there on a cheap tape. I'm like, I'm desperate to hear that band, and loved it. And it's a good introduction to the band, because it's not it kind of has one foot in their older style, one foot looking forward. Great album. It's where I started getting into Kirith Ungol again. Used tape, $3. One Foot in Hell, one of the best opening tracks on any album, with Blood and Iron. So, but this is also why when we get into those later 90s years of like 97, 98, I lose track of a ton of bands like the ones we've been talking about tonight, because my access was cut off to them for about 2 to 3 years there. It wouldn't be until 99, 2000 when I relocated to North Carolina. The local stores there had all the new releases from every label. Anything that got reviewed in Metal Maniacs would be on their shelf within a couple of weeks. But yeah, there's for 3 years there, everything I was buying was stuff that had come out 10 to 20 years earlier. And I think the whole time I lived in Texas, the only quote unquote new album I happened to stumble into in one of the stores was Rotting Christ's Triarchy of the Lost Lovers.
Century
I have
Media.
no idea. I have no idea who. No, it was a used CD. I have no idea who bought it. I have no idea who dropped it off at a store in West Texas.
Triarchy of the Lost Luggage.
Yeah, very well could have been. I don't know, but I snapped it up. But that kind of wraps up my year in music when I was 21. So now, Marty, I'll let you kind of show you what you want to wrap up with.
Oh man, I still have like 8 things here. Well, Deicide's Legion, 1992. I mean, it's faster than the debut. I think the debut is an amazing, amazing death metal record.
Yeah.
This is really good too, and I loved the shit out of this because it's brutal and it's really fast. It's short. You get in, you get out. You can spin it multiple times. I don't think the songs are as good as the self-titled, but I still really this was a banger for me for sure. Disharmonic Orchestra, Not to Be Unidimensionally Conscious. I love this record. These guys are so bizarre and strange. Obviously, the band photo there will tell you a little bit about them. The video for this album was Groove, which is basically just a bunch of like turkeys walking around, just their feet walking. It's just the way the distorted bass tone cuts. They do have a groove to them. It's not like a cheesy funk groove. It's just a very weird, organic groove. This band rules, and they were so good. This is a great, really warm, organic sounding record. I love this thing. And of course, back to the drum machine stuff. Godflesh Pure. Many consider this to be one of their best. I really like this record. I prefer the self-titled, the debut. I prefer Selfless. But I prefer half of Street Cleaner to this. But I still think this is a very good record. Not going to complain about this at all. And I just love the drum machine shit, man. I just do. When Godflesh would bring a drummer in, Ted Parsons from Prong. He's been in the band.
He's also.
I like it. What's that?
Sorry, my nerd. He was also in the Swans.
Yep, he's in the Swans as well. I prefer Godflesh with this as shitty drum machine. I just do. And I've got others here to talk about, but I'll just end with this. The Pieces EP from Dismember came out. Now you want to talk about a caustic attack of Swedish death metal. This is it. This is just there is zero room ambience in this album. It's just all static and fuzz and attack. It's great. The songs on here are great. This band is, I'm sorry, pound for pound, they beat Entombed. I know back in the day, everybody's like, oh, Dismember, just an Entombed clone. But you compare Left Hand Path to like an Ever-Flowing Stream. God, that's a tough battle, but I may have to side with Dismember. I might have to. It's a tough one. But they're both perfect records, really. But I think Dismember, for their longevity, they have one record where they followed Entombed a little too closely, and that was Massive Killing Capacity.
Yeah.
And I don't care for that record much. It's okay. But the rest of their shit is solid, rock solid, where Entombed wavered. But I love the shit out of this stuff. The first 3 or 4 Dismember records are really awesome. Really awesome.
I don't know, man. Fucking same difference all day. I don't give a fuck. No, I'm just kidding.
Right?
I do kind of like to ride straight, shoot.
Oh,
Street
dude, I love that record. To ride,
that.
shoot straight, and speak the truth. I love that record.
one
I
of those
love
people where I'm
Wolverine
like,
Blues.
I like death and roll shit for the most part. It's not my favorite thing in the fucking world. Don't get me wrong.
I don't like it when Dismember did it. I didn't like it when Desultory did it. That Swallow the Snake album swallowed all the dicks. Yeah, I didn't like it.
But like I don't even know if they're considered death and roll because I think they did their shit a little bit before, if I'm remembering right, before Wolverine Blues. But that Furball band were kind of
they're great. That's a good band.
Kind of approaching that in their own way. There was a lot of that kind of like in the water in Scandinavia, particularly Sweden, before Wolverine Blues even came out. Like the Afflicted was kind of weird like that, you know? Like I like some of that stuff a lot.
Afflicted were weird, more psychedelic, strange.
Yeah. They definitely were wearing like, I love the combination of like the Baja rug with like a bullet belt. I gotta bring that style back. That's fucking tight as shit. Dude looked like he was in the Spin Doctors, but just like wearing a bullet belt. That's so hot.
Nice drug rug, dude.
A lot of
you know, if you don't have a copy of this, that look will still do the trick.
That total Sigma male. Like, but yeah, it's tough for me because like I got into both at the same time. But man, I mean, Left Hand Path. The only counterpoint, you know, if I wanted to be whatever spicy about it or disagreeable, is I really love like an Ever-Flowing Stream. However, I do drift off a little bit during that. I feel like it's a little bit on the front-loaded side, that record, as opposed to Left Hand Path, which I think rages all the way through. But I will say that they're on equal footing. And again, dovetailing back to like Metal Maniacs opinions way back in the day, like in the early 90s. I remember, they're clones or ripoffs. It's like they were friends. They traded riffs with each other. And also that early Dismember stuff was like around at the same time of Nihilist, I think, like their very first demo. Was it not? Like they go way back. It's not like they were Johnny Comes Latelys that like came out with like an Ever-Flowing Stream right after Left Hand Path, and they weren't around in some way before, you know. Like
oh my God. Side B of Dismember, like an Ever-Flowing Stream, has Skinner Alive. That's only 2 minutes 15 seconds, but what a fucking ripper. God. Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
And got them in trouble, which is why they had to title their next album Indecent and Obscene, because they couldn't tour somewhere because of that or whatever. I think it was Britain, actually. I think they got like some kind of indecency ban or something like that. But hey, you know.
Well,
shit.
Patrick.
And just to, as we wrap up, just to prove that a cat really does land on its feet, checking things over here on Metal Archives as we've gone through our last few. Turns out Synergy did well enough in Japan that Burn Magazine offered Kim Goss a regular column for about 3 years.
Wow, she really, like I said, her tendrils, man, they were in everything. I'm a journalist. Cool.
Always found lands on feet.
Yep, lands on feet.
There you go. Sometimes things just keep working out for certain people.
Absolutely. Some people, they put their fists in the gold every time. I don't know.
One foot in the gutter, one fist in the gold, just like Ricky Rackman says.
Ricky Rackman, bro. Well, Patrick, you rule.
Him a column for 3 years.
You rule, sir. And it was good to have you back as always, man. Anytime you're available, let us know. Hit us up. All that good fun stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm out here in the suburbs of Raleigh, NC, just chilling.
Yeah, but no, it was a really fun topic, and folks in the chat have had a really great time with it too, offering up all the kinds of stuff they were listening to and obsessing over when they were 21. And yeah, it's obviously a different time frame for everybody. Some overlap with some people, decades apart for others. But it's been fun, kind of little nostalgia trip down memory lane for sure.
100%. And Pat, you have anything coming up you want to promote, pimp, plug, all that fun stuff?
Not anything specific. Just keep an eye out for more updates. I'm going to be going back at it with a little bit more regularity. I had a bunch of like little mini vacations and not so many vacations that I've been on in the past couple of months. So I've been busy with family stuff, but I should be back on my Sigma grind set to like tomorrow. I'm probably going to be shooting a video, so keep an eye out for that. We'll see.
Cool.
Pat also does he has a distro, Ground Zero Salem Records.
Just groundzerosalem.com. Yeah, that needs some love, some attention. People have still been steadily ordering stuff, but I need to get more stuff in it. I'm actually going to probably go through my collection and extract a solid amount of stuff that I don't feel is essential for me, but I'm going to be flipping a bunch of my own stuff. Not for
Let me know when you do that so I can dig in there and see if there's anything
not for anything scary or anything like that. I just want to downsize a little bit, create a little bit more space. I have doubles, because I'm a multi-format freak where I own things on like all three formats a lot. So I'm going to be like kind of slimming that down a little bit. Currently I'm on Big Cartel and they only have a limit of 500 things that you can put in stock. I want to probably fill that up. So I'll keep people posted on that. As
cool,
dude. Look into Shopify. I moved Binderin over to Shopify. It fucking rules, and their tech support is legit. You
Big
call them
Cartel.
and they actually fix your problems. It's great.
I haven't had any problems with Big Cartel. It's just like I was going for the platinum expensive one just because I could keep as much stuff in stock as possible, and they just jacked it up another $10. It went from like 20.
I think Shopify is only like $40 a month.
Okay. Right now I'm paying 30, but I mean, we'll see. It depends on the limit and stuff like that, but I haven't gotten anything new in a while. I still have plenty of cool stuff for sale. I have lots of stuff listed, but I'm going to be filling it up with my own personal stuff in a bit and probably getting in touch with some labels and distros probably by the end of the summer and stuff like that. But it's not been on like a back burner. I'm still selling stuff, but it's going to be getting more stuff soon. Put it that way.
Deal.
Alan, what's coming up for you on Tuesday on Let's Talk Metal?
That's a good question. I think it's a bunch of 7-inch singles by bands 5 people have heard of.
Excellent.
Big surprise there. But also it might be Broca's Helm. I think they're overdue to get a little love.
They're a good band.
So,
They're a good band.
Yeah, those will both be happening in the next couple of weeks. And
show notes for Heavy Metallurgy.
Yes, it's the middle of the year, and we know what that means.
Yep. Monday, I'm hoping to have a review. Kellen said he was submitting a review. I don't know if it's happening. I'm going to try to have a review up Monday or Wednesday for the new Orden Ogan, which none of you probably care about, but I do. Wednesday night, the Album Club will be talking about Scald, the band Scald, and the album Will of the Gods is a Great Power. And Friday, what's going on Friday?
Friday is our middle of the year check-in with Melanie and Simon. We'll be talking about the best albums that have come out in the first half of 2024. So you can see what we've been listening to a lot, what we've liked, maybe learn a little bit about some of the releases that might have slipped past you that you haven't had a chance to check out yet. So Simon will have his list, Melanie will have hers, Marty and I will have our lists, and we'll compare notes and see what everybody's been digging so far this year.
Right on. And everybody in the chat, you all rule. It's been a great night. You've been very busy and active as always. Go check out Ground Zero Salem. Go check out Let's Talk Metal. We will see you here next week, everybody. You rule. We will see you soon. Cheers. Have a good one.
Have a sexy weekend.
Yeah. Hey, Mel, watch out. Don't, if he's putting this album on, run the other way.
Run.
Get out the
Run.
hose. Get out the
Run.
garden hose.
Wait, Run Like Hell's on Dark Side of the Moon. It's not on this album.
Run like hell's on. It's on.
Is it the wall? Oh no,
yeah,
it's
the
on
wall.
Yeah.